Chapter 2255. In the meeting room of the base, Commander Bismay was sitting with a gloomy face. He was waiting for someone, and that person soon pushed the door open and entered. Calvin, the headmaster of the pilot school. In the dim meeting room, only the light from the screen was flashing. One was the headmaster of the pilot school, the other was the commander of the base. The two important people looked at each other in silence. After a long while, Commander Bismay asked slowly, "How's the pilot of Tsang-Lei?" "He's out of danger for now." Calvin sat down slowly, "but he'll recover soon." Commander Bismay was silent. It was the 3rd hour after the impact ended. When the blue thunder completely stopped, people dug out the pilot from the cockpit and saw a figure that looked like a bloody man. Shock, multiple comminuted fractures, and massive blood loss. No one believed that the pilot of Tsang-Lei could survive such terrible injuries. But the fact was the pilot, Lily, did survive. "Your experiment was too dangerous." Commander Bismay shook his head. Even if Tsang-Lei could be much more powerful than usual, the price was a pilot. "There are many schools for pilots," Calvin said indifferently, "but there's only one Tsang-Lei. Under normal circumstances, the so-called pilot candidates may not be able to sit on it for the rest of their lives. But if the newly developed system can be mass-produced, these students will no longer be mere decorations. If the mass-produced model can be equipped with the new system, it's estimated that it can have 30% of the power of the God Eater. Once it can be mass-produced, humans will no longer be restricted by the limited number of God Eater in the war against the messengers." Commander Bismay was silent. Calvin was personally promoted by him. It took him more than half a year to gain control of the pilot school. Otherwise, the control of the pilot school would still be in the hands of the student council. The pilot school in the second upper capital was different from other pilot schools, because so far, only the president of the student council could perfectly control Tsang-Lei. However, ever since Calvin developed a new system that allowed normal pilots to operate Tsang-Lei, Bismay felt that the opportunity to take back control of the pilot school had arrived. In order to prove the ability of the system, Calvin even forcefully changed the pilot of Tsang-Lei to a newcomer before the 97th impact, a girl named Lily. The result was obvious. If it weren't for the 98th impact, the new pilot's performance could be considered qualified. With the new system, even if he wasn't a special talent, he could still control Tsang-Lei. After that, Calvin debugged the system again. After debugging, Tsang-Lei exploded with great power. It was just that it was a little taxing on the pilot. But just as Calvin had said, what did a pilot school have the most? Most of them were pilot. Calvin. Commander Bismay took a deep breath. "I hereby authorize you to lead the Evangelion project. Let the humans truly stand up in this war. I hope you won't disappoint me." Calvin smiled. "Don't worry, the students in the school will definitely become the Evangelion soldiers." In her mouth there was still a trace of blood. The girl slowly woke up in a clean room. There was still a needle for infusion in her arm. But except for the slight weakness in her body, the feeling of death had disappeared. The girl, Lily, slowly got up and saw a man dozing off beside the bed. "Sir Ludic?" The man knocked his head and quickly woke up. He said with concern, Lily, you finally woke up. Sir Ludic, your hand." Lily's eyes couldn't help but focus. There was still a shallow bite mark on Ludic's wrist. She had seen Sir Ludic's miraculous self-healing ability. Even if it was a cut, it could quickly heal. "It's nothing, as long as you're okay." Ludic shrugged and pulled down his sleeve. "Asax isn't here, so I have the responsibility to take care of you. Next time, just don't bite so hard." With Ludic's miraculous self-healing ability, how much force did I bite to leave a mark on his wrist? The girl's heart trembled. "I'm sorry," Ludic frowned. "Is driving the God Eater so dangerous every time? I don't understand what that old man Calvin is thinking. Why would he let you do such a dangerous thing?" Listen to me and give up your pilot's license. I'm not someone who can be revived by a dead person. Lily was silent. Did that old man Calvin say something to you? Ludic keenly sensed something, the reason why Lily was willing to drive the God-Eater, even though she knew that she might die. Actually, the girl opened her mouth. Are you awake, Lily? But at this time, the door of the infirmary opened automatically, and Grand Scholar Calvin walked in slowly. Ludic, are you still here? After the treatment, you should leave immediately. You can't expose your special constitution. Mr. Ludic's eyes narrowed. He grabbed Grand Scholar Calvin's collar and said in a low voice, Old man, I should have told you not to go too far, right? Lily is not your tool. I don't think so. Grand Scholar Calvin shook his head. Come with me, I have something to tell you. Ludic frowned, took a deep breath, and slowly let go of him. Have a good rest. Grand Scholar Calvin looked at Lily and said. After leaving the infirmary, Ludic was taken to another closed room. Along the way, Mr. Ludic was very silent. Old man, this is not a good place to talk. What do you want to know? Mr. Ludic muttered. What did you do when Lily disappeared? The fighting style of this song lay is obviously different from that of the 97th time. What can I do? Grand Scholar Calvin said indifferently. I spent most of my time in the office. Didn't you come to monitor me when you were free? Mr. Ludic narrowed his eyes. Grand Scholar Calvin said expressionlessly, What? You didn't find out anything after sleeping with my secretary, right? Mr. Ludic simply chuckled. How can you say that it's sleeping? Grand Scholar Calvin suddenly said faintly, You should believe me. After all, you're my best student. Essex is too far behind. Mr. Ludic shrugged. Old man, I don't think it's useful to play the emotional card at a time like this. Then let's do something else. Grand Scholar Calvin suddenly said. As he spoke, a blue electric arc suddenly appeared. Mr. Ludic instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. He felt his whole body go numb and twitch. A taser baton was already in Calvin's hand, and it was pressed directly on his body. Old man, you! He fell to the ground and lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he was sitting on the cold floor. Mr. Ludic shook his dizzy head hard, but at the moment when he moved, he heard the sound of metal colliding. Mr. Ludic was instantly shocked and soon found that his neck, hands, and feet were shackled at this time. The chains were connected to the metal wall. His face changed slightly, and he subconsciously reached out to touch his neck. It's gone? At this moment, a ray of light suddenly appeared above his head. The person standing behind the glass curtain wall was none other than Grand Scholar Calvin. Don't look for it. The inheritance of the sage family is with me. Grand Scholar Calvin stretched out his hand at this time, and a necklace slowly fell out. Old man, what do you mean by this? Mr. Ludic suppressed his anger and asked in a deep voice. I'll keep holy glory for you for a while. Grand Scholar Calvin said slowly, Before that, you just need to stay here. This kind of house arrest standard is really low. Mr. Ludic sneered. No, not house arrest. Calvin shook his head. It's a job. Only you can do it. At the moment when he spoke, a few spotlights suddenly lit up in the underground secret room. The lights illuminated the underground secret room. Mr. Ludic couldn't help but look sad at this time. In addition to him, there were more than a dozen crawling guys. They were covered in blood, and there were both men and women. They were wearing the uniforms of the driver school students. These students, without exception, had all kinds of terrible injuries on their bodies. They were like evil spirits crawling in hell. Old man? Mr. Ludic gasped. These students can still be saved, you can save them. Grand Scholar Calvin said indifferently, Without you, there would be no gospel. You're the real gospel soldier. The first zombie-like student had already crawled to the front of Mr. Ludic. He suddenly opened his mouth and bit Mr. Ludic's leg fiercely. His eyes were full of madness and bloodthirst. Mr. Ludick instinctively wanted to kick him away, but he felt powerless. He couldn't use his strength. The zombie-like students crawled onto his body one by one. "Calvin, you bastard!" His angry shouts were soon drowned out by the cries of agony that followed. Above, Scholar Calvin watched the scene silently until everything gradually subsided. The lights went off. "Have you heard that Mr. Ludick was injured in the impact last night, and he can't come to school temporarily?" How could this be? I quite like Ludick's idle teaching. I wonder who the substitute teacher is? I think it's a new teacher called Mr. Robert. In fact, less than half of the students were in the class, and the number of students who could come to school today was 4 times less than usual. Because of the 100th impact last night, many roads in a second upper capital were blocked, and almost half of the city was paralyzed. Ms. Meshi didn't come either. It seems that she was injured in the battle last night. The whispers of discussion were still going on, but because of the impact earlier, the students were no longer talking about the ghost incident. Yulia glanced at Madanzo, and the two quietly walked out of the classroom from the back door. Not only did Meshi not come to school, but Zhuji also didn't come to school. Not only that, Zhuji didn't even come back to the dormitory last night, and even Madanzo didn't know where Zhuji went. Is Ludick really injured? Madanzo frowned. I don't know, I haven't reported to the principal's office today. Yulia shook her head. It seems that the ghost incident book needs to be suspended for a while. I'll go find Calvin now. Let's wait at the usual place. Madanzo nodded. Then, he wandered around the campus aimlessly. As he walked, he unknowingly came to the president's office. Outside the door, 2 students from the picket team stood like guards. Madanzo blinked. That mysterious girl president also came to school today? Wait, the president asked you to come in. Madanzo didn't plan to get in touch with the mysterious girl president, but the door of the president's office suddenly opened, and the person who came out was Vice President Millet of the picket team. Me? There was no familiar smell of marijuana in the office. It seemed that Mr. Ludick really wasn't at school. Yulia pointed at herself in surprise. Yes, I plan to make you the second driver of Tsang Lei, Calvin said seriously, and from today onwards. Yulia couldn't help but frown and said subconsciously, Master Calvin, I'm new here. Let alone driving, I don't even understand the knowledge of the God-Eater. It's not suitable, right? Kay or Lily can do it, and so can you, Calvin said indifferently. You're better than her. I won't misjudge people. But, at this time, Calvin suddenly said, only by becoming a pilot can you drive this place and return to the Holy Light Kingdom and the free cities. Senior sister Yulia's eyes narrowed. She was a perfect example of what it meant to be shocked, what it meant to be shocked, and what it meant to be surprised and uneasy. She even said with a trembling voice, Are you serious? As long as you are willing. Master Calvin nodded slowly. You're the candidate of the Holy Maiden, and if there are no accidents, you'll be the next Holy Maiden. The resurrection ceremony of the Holy Maiden still needs your presence. As a scholar of the Free City, I can't let you stay here forever. Yulia, the Free City needs you. Only you can do it. Yulia took a deep breath, and her mind was stirred. I understand, Master Calvin. What are you going to do? If the real Yulia was here, she would probably be filled with passion, and drink up this bowl of poisonous chicken soup, right? The second upper capital was busy. A large number of logistics teams were cleaning up the traces of the battle and collecting the remains of the messenger who was attacked for the 100th time. However, Tsang Lei's combat style was too violent. In the end, he even crazily bit and tore apart the messenger's body, causing the messenger's remains to fall in many places. As a last resort, the area within several kilometers of the battle site was sealed. We found a piece of remains here. Call transport car number 9. It was a piece of black meat that was about the size of an ordinary car. It should have lost its vitality. Several logistics personnel were setting up a cordon around this piece of meat. Who are you? You're not allowed to get close. Are you a student from the pilot school? A young man with black hair and black eyes, wearing glasses, and wearing the uniform of the pilot school slowly walked over. They wanted to stop him, even if he was a student from the pilot school. But all of a sudden, they silently fell to the ground and fainted. Only then did the young man approach the black lump of flesh. Zhu Zhu reached out his hand and slowly placed it on the black meat. He murmured, "Thank you for your hard work. Please use the last of your power." A slight space distortion slowly appeared behind Zhu Zhu. The space distortion turned into a small vortex. In the vortex, a strange creature with a bulging belly and a twisted face crawled out slowly. It had no gender but looked vaguely like a man. At this time, the strange fellow directly climbed onto the black piece of meat. With a turn of its head, it began to quickly devour this huge piece of black meat. When transport car number 9 drove over, it only saw a few logistics personnel sitting on the ground blankly. "Where's the remains of the messenger?" "Huh? What remains of the messenger?" "I don't know." "Did you detect the fluctuation of the impact just now?" "What impact? How is that possible?" "It disappeared." "Did the system make a mistake?" "Maybe. After all, I've never seen this weak shockwave. You scared me." Chapter 2256. There were 3 paths in front of the dormitory. At the same time, the 3 of them returned to the dormitory together. Senior Yulia, Madanzo, and classmate Zhu Zhu. It was like the probability of a lottery in a supermarket. No one spoke, and the air was quiet. Senior Yulia could only pick up the shopping bag in her hand and said, "On the way back, we passed by a shop that was open and bought some ingredients. How about we eat hot pot tonight?" They sat together in a circle. In the common room, the table was filled with food, but the soup for the hot pot hadn't boiled yet. The wait was long, especially since they kept silent. "Speaking of which, how about we go visit Meshi?" Senior Yulia was the first to speak. "When?" Classmate Zhu Zhu asked directly. "Now isn't a good time, right?" Senior Yulia thought for a bit and said, "How about tomorrow? There are many people in the school who want to take leave, so it doesn't matter if we go. I just don't know if the base will allow us to visit." "I'm not going." Madanzo shook her head and said, "The official training for the summer festival starts tomorrow. I'm in charge of the performance, so I can't miss it." "The summer festival is still going to be held?" Senior Yulia said in surprise. "The challenge just ended, how can they still be in the mood?" Madanzo shrugged and said, "It seems to be a tradition. It's held once a year and can't be cancelled." "I see." Senior Yulia frowned slightly. At this time, the soup ingredients had completely boiled. "Tomorrow, if you can enter the base, please say hello to Miss Meshi for me." Madanzo smiled and said, "Zhu Zhu, do you still want to come to my room to play games tonight? I cleared the level last night." Classmate Zhu Zhu picked up a piece of beef and said, "You weren't here last night, so I cleared the level by myself." Madanzo blinked in surprise and nodded thoughtfully. "Then it's fine, I'll play by myself." The hot pot dinner was finished in silence, and then they returned to their rooms. The next day, Senior Yulia went out a bit later than usual because she didn't want to go to school. When she passed by Madanzo's room, she knocked on the door, but there was no response. When she went downstairs to the common area, she saw Zhu, wearing an apron and holding a plate. It wasn't a sumptuous meal, but for 2 people it was a bit too much. For 2 people. "You did all this?" Senior sister Yulia was a little surprised. She didn't understand Zhu S's behavior. Shinji-san said that preparing breakfast for girls can surprise them, and then make them have a good impression of you, Zhu said with a smile. "So I plan to try it." "So, you want to increase my favorability?" Senior sister Yulia was instantly bewildered. "What do you want to do? Do you have a surprise?" Zhu walked up to Yulia. It's more like a shock his presence made Yulia feel like a prince in a girl's manga. What's this? I don't want my soul lamp to be extinguished. I suddenly remembered that I woke up too late. We should go now, or else we won't be able to catch the bus. Yulia took a deep breath. The traffic in the second Shangjing is almost paralyzed. If we can't catch the bus, I'm afraid we can only wait until the afternoon. You're not eating? Zhu asked in confusion. I'm not eating, she yelled, grabbed Zhu's arm and rushed out. Before leaving, she couldn't help but look back. There were a few candles on the damn table. What's this? Candlelight breakfast? The driver's school. Today, more students returned to school than yesterday, but it wasn't as lively as before. The substitute teacher for Ludic, Robert, was a serious guy who didn't like to smile. Of course, this guy was serious because he used to work undercover. Madanzo knew this Robert, Calvin's nephew. When they were in the Holy Light Kingdom, it took him many years to get close to Balaam, the president of the City of Dawn. It knew a lot of daily information about the Holy Light Kingdom because its soul had always been in the interlayer of the destiny system, silently watching everything. Of course, although it could learn a lot, it couldn't see the light of day, and it was often persecuted by the system. Therefore, it couldn't know everything about the Holy Light Kingdom. Robert and Calvin were together. However, when everyone was dragged into the Book of Gaia, by the black mud, it should have been random. Based on this situation, the probability of Calvin and Robert being together was very low, very low. The sound of the piano slowly sounded. Madanzo was practicing the score while the students in the class were standing in a few rows, practicing the chorus. Madanzo's thoughts returned to yesterday afternoon when it passed by the student council president's office. The mysterious girl president asked it to go in just to tell it something. Calvin disappeared mysteriously for a period of time and then suddenly reappeared. There was no trace of it at all. It was as if he suddenly disappeared from this world and then suddenly reappeared. The moment it walked out of the girl president's office, Madanzo had a guess. This might not be the first time that Grand Scholar Calvin came to the Page world. Most importantly, did this young female president of the student council know something? Then, why did he have to tell her about this? It didn't ask why and just pretended not to know. The girl's mysteriousness made it feel like it was sitting on pins and needles. In fact, whether it was this driving school or the second Shangjing, the whole world here was filled with a strange and mysterious power. Yulia didn't notice it because her level wasn't high enough. However, Madanzo could. It used to be the clerk of the Kingdom of Heaven, and its rank was even higher than the sage. It was close to the Trinity of the Holy Father, Holy Spirit, and Holy Son. To Madanzo, this Page world was visible but hazy. There was a thin film in the middle, but it wasn't as easy to break through. The impact brought about the primeval demon of the void. Then, behind the space distortion, the black and white keys stopped moving, and the song was finished. Madanzo took a deep breath, closed its eyes, and felt the music dissipate. There was only one thought left in its mind. Explore the space behind the space vortex that appeared during the impact. Shinji, you played so well. Do you have a girlfriend? My name is Mary. In the crowd, a girl wearing glasses and extremely passionate looked at Seiji with interest. Looking at this brave girl with big breasts and glasses, Madanzo raised his eyebrows. Accept Mary's confession. Mary's favorability plus 30. Overall male hostility plus 5. As a present, you must dare to face the resentment of single dogs. Please carry the burden of the curse and go straight to the root of the problem. Reject Mary's confession. Mary's favorability minus 50. Girlfriends are not as fun as boys. As a professional boxer, your future should be the sea of stars. Mechas are the romance of men. Thank you for the invitation. I'm on my way. He didn't know what year it was in this world, But even the God Devourer, a battle machine, was created, and the city was still using the old-fashioned trolley car. It was too much. Because of the paralysis of the traffic, the trolley car that finally arrived was packed with people. Student Zhu blinked and lowered his head as he said, "This scene appeared in the game before." At this moment, they were forced to the front of the trolley car. It was really crowded, and their chests were pressed against each other. Senior sister had been saving lives, and when she got on the trolley car, she found a small newspaper stand next to the bus station. "What kind of game?" Senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but ask curiously. "I think it's called asterisk 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 asterisk." Senior sister, Yulia, sucked in a breath of cold air. She almost forgot that the theme of this world was little butter. Zhu, after all, a game is just a game. We can't find the truth in an imaginary game." Senior sister, Yulia, hurriedly said, "We can't treat reality as a game, especially those games with strange plots." Zhu suddenly tilted his head as if he was thinking about something. Seeing that the other party didn't do anything, senior sister, Yulia, secretly heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, the trolley car suddenly made a sharp turn, and everyone fell to the side. Senior sister's whole body was pressed against the door. At the same time, Zhu quietly stepped out with his left foot between senior sister Yulia's legs. Senior sister, Yulia, suddenly raised her head, and her face was full of disbelief. Her body trembled slightly as if she had been electrocuted. Silently endure Zhu's actions. Pleasure +10, shame +1, morality +50, Zhu's favorability +0. 1b. Turning the tables. Zhu's favorability -10. What happened? A new option appeared at this time, but the new option didn't remove the option to solve Meshi's love problem that she had ignored before. The original option only showed incomplete, and it was still there. However, to senior sister Yulia's surprise, Zhu didn't go any further. She was even prepared to sacrifice herself for option A. Not only did Zhu not go any further, Zhu even used his hand to push against the door, creating a relatively safe space for senior sister Yulia in the narrow space. "Do you feel better?" Zhu asked softly. A bright smile appeared on Yulia's face, and she couldn't help but hold her breath. "I'm going to die, I'm going to die. What's with this heart-pounding feeling?" In her misty vision, runes were constantly jumping around. "Your favorability towards Zhu +1. Your favorability towards Zhu +0. 5. Your favorability towards Zhu +0. 5. Your favorability towards Zhu +2. Do you think I'm going to be taken advantage of?" Base station, base station. Passengers heading to the base station, please disembark safely. The moment the door opened, senior sister Yulia's legs went soft, and she almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, there was someone supporting her. Senior sister Yulia took a deep breath, and that inexplicable heart-pounding feeling gradually calmed down. The notification of the increase in favorability also gradually disappeared. "Are you okay?" Zhu's soft voice sounded. Senior sister Yulia shook her head and walked in front. "Come on, the base is right in front of us. Don't waste time." Zhu looked at her back and muttered to himself thoughtfully, "Will there be a similar effect if I don't choose?" In Zhu's vision, Yulia was walking in front, but the two bubble-like frames above her head were slowly disappearing. The two bubbles meant that there were two different options, and there would be two different rewards. The content was similar to some of the controls in the asterisk game that Shinji recommended to him. The reason why he didn't choose the option was that he didn't feel like playing outdoor games. Stand still. This is a military area. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter. A row of soldiers stood there with guns in their hands, and two of them were even flexing their bulging chest muscles. Yulia felt like she could beat dozens of them by herself, but she had to act ladylike. "We're students from the pilot school, and we're here to visit Ms. Meshi. Can you let us in, big brother? Seductive eyes, seductive eyes. No one can withstand my seductive eyes. If there is, then I'll seduce you a few more times. Take these two guys to me. Oh, they're here to visit Ms. Meshi. Please come in with me. The murderous soldier instantly calmed down. The female student who was seducing him suddenly became like a family member, and he didn't want to stop her. Under the surprised gazes of his companions, he led the two students into the base. The other soldiers didn't say anything because this guy was their captain, and he would take the blame if anything happened. Classmate Zhu stepped forward and asked curiously, "How did you do it?" Senior Yulia rubbed her forehead. "Because I'm too cute." Classmate Zhu thought for a while and said, "Until now I still don't know how to define cute. The definition of cute is also quite vague. However, Yulia classmate really makes me feel very interested. If possible, I hope to continue the unfinished business with you." What unfinished business? Yulia subconsciously froze. Could it be from that night in Meshi's room? Stop Meshi's romance. The men in this world are all pigs, and only women are true love. After success, Meshi's bond plus 50 will be unlocked, and the achievement Orange in Orange will be unlocked. Help Meshi's romance. After a successful confession, Meshi's favorability will increase by 100, and she will become a close friend who can play private games with you. You can unlock the side quest, Threesome. As expected, Threesome refers to this. I didn't expect you to be this kind of boss. Let's see Meshi first. Senior Yulia walked with her head lowered. The captain of the guards in front was leading the way, and the two of them followed behind, passing through the complicated passages. Then, behind them, a strange crawling figure flashed past. Chapter 2257. When the captain of the guards turned around, he found that the two students who came to visit were gone. Suddenly, he stood there in a daze. After a while, he patted his cheeks hard, but he was even more confused. "Why am I here? Why didn't you follow that person?" Zhu asked curiously. "It's rare for you to come to the base. Don't you want to see what this base has?" Yulia didn't even look back. It wasn't that she was in a hurry, but she didn't dare to look into his eyes. Yulia found that her condition was a bit strange. As long as she met Zhu's eyes, her heart would inexplicably beat faster, and her favorability would increase. She would even become emotional. This obviously wasn't her intention. She wanted to refuse, but she couldn't control her own will. If this continued, sooner or later, she would lose control. "I'm indeed a bit curious." Zhu nodded. "Am I right?" Yulia calmed her uncontrollable emotions while organizing her thoughts. "Maybe I can get close to the remains of the messenger. I've never seen it at such a close distance before. Just thinking about it makes me a little excited." The main reason was that although the captain of the guards led them closer, it was against the rules. In such a big base, it was impossible for no one to notice this. Yulia didn't think that the captain of the guards could lead them to Meshi without any hindrance. As one of the few pilots of the God Eater, if there wasn't a strong security force around Meshi at this time, no one would believe it. Warning! Warning! 2 trespassers have been found in the 3rd section of Passage B in Area 5. The lights in the passage instantly turned red. Yulia wasn't too surprised. She just said calmly, "Follow me." After that, she resisted the feeling of being electrocuted, gritted her teeth, grabbed Zhu's wrist, and rushed to the 2 guards who happened to appear at the corner of the passage. "You." The 2 guards reacted quickly and were about to raise their guns. Senior Yulia punched one kid after another, making Zhu Chu's eyes shine. Senior Zhu Chu quickly said, "The guy on the left has a similar figure as you. You change into his clothes, and I'll change into the one on the right." Zhu blinked and said, "Yulia, you seem to be very familiar with these businesses. Taking advantage of others, sneaking in, going undercover, using underhanded means, killing people and arson. Senpai Yulia's golden belt was more than 10 palaces could contain. However, she kept a low profile and said calmly, "It's for the sake of living, so I have to spend a little bit more." "Please wait a moment," Zhu suddenly said. The senior was stunned. She blinked and saw that Zhu had already reached out to her chest and helped her adjust the collar of her uniform. Her heart naturally skipped a few beats, and her favorability increased by +1+1+1. Senior sister Yulia was dumbfounded. "Do I have a F** king body that's easy to flirt with? My favorability increased by just flirting with her. Why don't you just let me lie on the bed and spread my legs? Why do you have so many fancy options?" She pinched her eyebrows and suppressed an inexplicable shyness. "Let's hide these two guys first." After changing into the uniform of the base guards, it was much easier to move around. After Yulia quietly created a communication device on the way, she quickly located Meshi's location and scanned the map of the base. As the pilot of God Eater and an exchange student who came to second Shangjing, Ms. Meshi obviously had a lot of privileges. For example, the infirmary where she was recuperating could be called a sanatorium. In the huge empty room, a quiet courtyard was projected with holographic technology, and in the middle was a white sanatorium room. When Yulia and Zhu walked into the courtyard, they saw Meshi sitting by the pond in the courtyard, silently looking at the fish in the pond. The approaching footsteps startled the girl by the pond. Meshi looked up subconsciously, and her dazed eyes were soon filled with surprise. "How did you guys? As a wingman, you're a professional. Tell Meshi that this is Zhu's intention." Meshi's favorability towards Zhu +5. Meshi's favorability towards you +2. Gratitude +1. Obtained achievement, helper. B. Don't say anything, just go up and hug her. Meshi's favorability +1. Meshi's shyness +1. Yulia senpai was silent. B** starred? But before she did anything, Zhu had already moved. He walked directly to Meshi's side and looked at her. "I heard that you were injured, so I came to see you. Are you okay?" I'm fine." Meshi nodded slightly and said softly, "Actually, there are no external injuries. The doctor said that I just have a concussion, and I'll be fine after some rest." Yulia opened her mouth and eyes wide. The new option had disappeared, but the one about Meshi's relationship was still there. She pondered for a moment, then coughed twice, breaking the ambiguous halo of the man and woman by the pool that almost blinded her eyes. "Meshi, come here for a moment. I have something to say to you in private." "Me?" Meshi looked over in surprise, then nodded and said, "All right, let's go inside the house." Next to the pond, Zhu was imitating Meshi and observing the fish in the water. The two girls in the room looked at each other at almost the same time. Meshi bit her lips and said, "Yulia, what do you want to say to me?" Yulia frowned and said, "Meshi, you didn't just get hit in the head. Are you in trouble?" "Why do you ask?" Meshi asked in surprise. "Why do I ask? Of course, it's because of the options. A. Meshi seems to be troubled by something, and you decide to help her. B. Meshi seems to be troubled by something, and you decide to ignore it. Maybe it's because of my friend's intuition?" Yulia could only force herself to ask, "So, is there something troubling you?" Meshi remained silent for a while before she slowly said, "Yulia, what's the situation with the ghost incident at school? Why all of a sudden?" Meshi took a deep breath and said, "Do you still remember the things written on Jamia's ghost account? I seem to have encountered the same situation as him." Yulia subconsciously said, "The same situation means..." Meshi shook her head lightly, and her eyes gradually lost focus. "I don't know. During the battle yesterday, I had a very strange dream after I was hit by the messenger's attack. This dream was very real, and I even lived through my short life. And then..." Meshi rubbed her forehead and said, "It's nothing, I just had a dream. I'm a bit concerned about it. After all, this dream was too real. Yulia thought for a moment and asked, "What did you encounter in the dream?" Meshi hesitated for a moment before she slowly looked outside the window. She looked at Zhu in the courtyard and said in an uncertain tone, "In the dream, I seemed to be someone's maid, but at the same time, I was also a special talent of the country. I seemed to be a special talent. It was a very strange society, and it was completely different from our current society. Also, I seemed to have seen Zhu in the dream." "You saw him in that world?" Yulia's breathing quickened. "What happened after that? What happened after that?" She recalled Madanzo's guess. After that. Meshi seemed to be trying hard to remember, and she secretly looked at Zhu in the courtyard again. "I don't remember clearly. I seem to have gone to do something, but I encountered an accident and then I died. Died. After I died, I woke up." Meshi sighed and said as if she was talking to herself, "I feel like there's something very important that I haven't finished. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I keep thinking about this and feel uneasy. But after seeing you guys, I feel much better." The girl's eyes suddenly widened, and she felt as if she had been electrocuted. All her thoughts stopped at this moment. After a long time, Meshi subconsciously touched her lips. She could still feel Yulia's touch. Why? Meshi looked at her absent-mindedly. "Why can't I?" Yulia said faintly, "Why can't I? If the person just now was Zhu, would you ask why, Meshi?" "Yulia, you're jealous." Senior sister, Yulia, let out a sigh of relief and said with a bitter smile, "We're so close, so why isn't I the one who appeared in your dream? Do you know that you said that I'm the first friend you've ever made? But you're also the first friend I've ever made. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." After that, Yulia pursed her lips, lowered her head, and rushed out of the room. When she passed by the courtyard, she bumped into Zhu, who was walking toward her. She didn't say anything and directly knocked Zhu away. Zhu looked at Meshi in confusion, only to see Meshi standing in front of the door with a complicated expression. Zhu suddenly frowned as if he was surprised, but he quickly nodded at Meshi. "I'll go and see her." In the courtyard of the recuperation center, Meshi sat alone on the steps outside the door, silently staring at something, hesitating. For the first time, I have someone I like. For the first time, I have a lifelong friend." These two joyous events were intertwined, and now, these two joyous events would become double the joy that overlapped with each other. Please accept Yulia's feelings. Zhu was the one who came first. Why is Yulia so familiar with it? How many times has she kissed? You doubt Yulia's sincerity and think she has ulterior motive. Please keep a distance from Yulia. What should I do? You've unlocked the achievement. Orange in orange. Option B can't be option B. It's impossible to have a threesome in this life. This choice can only develop towards option A. Yulia leaned against the wall with her arms crossed. Soon after, Zhu walked over slowly with a trace of curiosity on his face. "Do you want to continue visiting the base?" Yulia asked directly. Zhu thought for a while and said, "I've finished what I wanted to do. It's okay whether I continue or not." "What you wanted to do? I didn't see you doing anything." Yulia was a bit confused, but she quickly shook her head and said, "Then go back. If you stay for too long, you'll be exposed." "Okay." Zhu nodded and looked at the time. "I'll catch the next tram." Is it going to happen again? I don't know if I can handle it this time." The base covered a large area and there were facilities on the ground and underground. In the base, 30 meters underground, there was a huge space. There were hundreds of 3-meter-tall containers erected here. These containers were used to store the remains of the messengers that were recovered after the battle. At this moment, the staff members were sending the remains of the 100th messenger into the storage room for future research. "I heard that there are 2 trespassers, but they haven't been found yet." "This has nothing to do with us. You can't enter without a communication pass. Let's finish our work quickly. Um. Strange, how come the containers here are broken? In the corner, a container was broken, and the solution used to store the remains of the messengers spilled all over the ground. When the staff members got close, they heard some strange noises that sounded like bones being crushed. What is this dash? On the ground, there was a strange figure lying on top of the remains of a messenger. When it turned around, everyone couldn't help but gasp in shock. The strange figure instantly flew toward the several staff members. Monster. Ah dash! A miserable shriek rang out in the sealed storage room, and then it quickly calmed down. In the dark storage room, there was only a strange sound that was constantly crawling. Today's practice will end here. In the music room, the music teacher in charge of teaching said, and the students heaved a sigh of relief. Madanzo had already left the piano and quietly walked out of the music room. Shin-san. At this moment, a deep male voice called out to Metatro, who had slipped out of the back door. It turned around and saw a stern face that did not like to smile. It was the new teacher who replaced Ludic-san, Mr. Robert. Sensei, what can I do for you? Madanzo said calmly, the practice is over and it's time to rest. That's why I came to find you. Mr. Robert said indifferently, come with me. What are we going to do? You'll know when we get there. Chapter 2258. The pilot school could actually change its shape. When necessary, a large number of weapons and armors could emerge from the entire school building. Beneath it, there must be an even larger facility. The elevator was descending at a very fast speed. It was about 40 to 50 meters deep. Madanzo wasn't surprised. However, Robert seemed to be surprised. You're very calm. Because I believe the teachers in the school won't harm me. Madanzo revealed a big smile. The elevator paused and then the door opened. Robert just said indifferently, we're here. Go in. The principal is waiting for you inside. In front of her was a floating passage. Every step she took, the floor would light up. It seemed to be a bottomless abyss. Madanzo looked calm and walked slowly. At the end of the passage, a door opened. Madanzo walked in and instantly felt like she walked into a huge aquarium. It was a ring-shaped space. Inside the glass curtain wall, it was filled with a dark blue liquid like the deep sea. And there was something in the deep sea. It was pale like a human, but it was an unimaginable giant. The giant's hands were crossed in front of its chest. It had no eyes. In the middle of its eyebrows was a huge horn like a tree trunk and bright red lips. What shocked Madanzo the most was that there was a natural hole in the middle of the giant's neck. Grand Scholar Calvin stood aside and looked at Madanzo calmly. Do you know what's inside? Calvin asked slowly. Messenger? Madanzo said in an uncertain tone. To be precise, it's the messenger of one. Grand Scholar Calvin said indifferently, except for Zero, who mysteriously disappeared, it's the messenger closest to a human. Apart from having hands and feet, this thing doesn't look like it wants to be human. Metatro blinked. This is the top secret image captured by humans after one appeared. Grand Scholar Calvin waved his hand. The glass curtain wall began to project many images. In this huge space full of blue fluorescence, Madanzo looked slightly moved. These images were all the information of one. In these pictures there was Messenger, a one who sitting on the top of a mountain, meditating, sitting by the sea, watching the sunset. There was also it lying in the forest, with countless animals gathered on its body to rest. What did you see? Calvin suddenly asked. Madanzo frowned. It's not aggressive? What else? It's thinking. Madanzo thought for a while and then said, it's learning. To be precise, it's still evolving. Grand Scholar Calvin said in a deep voice, Messenger, one is not only thinking, but also learning and evolving. That's why I said it's closer to a human. Madanzo was silent. In fact, it knew what a one was like. It was the kind of thing that countless immortals feared in the dimensional void. Tell me how you feel now. Grand Scholar Calvin smiled slightly. Madanzo shrugged and said, "So, Sir Headmaster, why did you suddenly call me here and tell me these things? What is your purpose?" "It's not my wish." Calvin shook his head. "It's just a choice. I chose to let you complete one's good messenger." Madanzo felt a little bad. This ominous feeling was soon verified. Robert, who was behind it, suddenly stood up, clamped down on its hands and pushed it towards Calvin, or rather, towards the glass wall. At the same time, Madanzo also saw the full appearance of one. In addition to the 4 limbs of a human, it had a huge tail that extended from its spine. It turned out that there were countless corpses buried at the bottom. It was a shocking sea of corpses. "Do you see the hole on one's neck?" Grand Scholar Calvin said slowly. "It's shrinking. By filling this hole, one can complete its evolution. When it's completely filled, it will become perfect." Madanzo struggled for a while. Mr. Robert directly pressed its head, pressing Madanzo's whole body against the glass curtain. "You'd better be quiet. It'll make you suffer less." Madanzo gritted its teeth, saying in shock and fear, "What do you want to do to me?" "As I said, we need you to fill the vacancy of one." Grand Scholar Calvin said indifferently, "Of course, you alone are not enough. You're just one of the nutrient. There are so many students in the school, why did you choose me?" Madanzo said in a trembling voice. "It's not why I chose you, but you were chosen." Grand Scholar Calvin said indifferently, "As I said, this is not my intention. There are some things that you won't really understand even if I explain it to you. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for being born in such a world. Robert, do it." Mr. Robert heard that and simply nodded. "Isn't it just a void ancestor that is about to evolve into a void azura? It's no big deal." Robert and Calvin's faces instantly changed when they heard the words of the restrained teenager. "You?" The moment his face changed slightly, Robert only felt a huge force directly bouncing him away. He flew out in an instant. Madanzo loosened her neck at this time and showed a bright smile. "I'm familiar with Void Ancestor. After all, I've killed hundreds of thousands of them in the past." Robert quickly got up, but he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. A few of his ribs had actually been broken in the instant he bounced back. Grand Scholar Calvin's face instantly darkened. Without saying anything, he reached into his pocket and took out a silver pistol. It was not a bullet but a high-energy beam that shot out. However, the moment the beam came into contact with Metatro, it bounced off like a reflection on a mirror. Grand Scholar Calvin was instantly shocked and doubtful. Madanzo approached indifferently and said expressionlessly, "After all, you're a legendary mage. Don't you think it's a little too degrading to use such a low-level weapon? Mage Merlin? How can you?" Grand Scholar Calvin's face suddenly changed dramatically. Madanzo shrugged and said, "The whole Celtic god system has been cast into the kingdom of holy light. Since Morgan has been born, it's not strange that another legendary mage will appear. It's as if no one knows." "Are you also?" Grand Scholar Calvin's eyes narrowed. Madanzo picked her ears at this time and said, "In the words of a perfectionist woman, don't confuse me with trash like you." At this moment, Robert endured the severe pain and flew toward Madanzo. "Go." Grand Scholar Calvin reacted very quickly. Almost at the moment when Robert moved, he turned around and flew out without the slightest hesitation. Madanzo chuckled and said, "Although I've been the one being abused recently, it's my turn now. It's really cool to kill a kid with one punch." Robert flew out again. The moment he landed, he had already lost consciousness. Then Grand Scholar Calvin was directly slapped to the ground, and his limbs were directly broken. Madanzo directly sat on Grand Scholar Calvin at this time, clapped her hands and said, "Okay, let's straighten things out now. Who are you?" His limbs were broken, but his mind was still clear. The pain he had to endure was unimaginable. If he was not an ascetic, he would have fainted long ago. Me? Madanzo pointed at herself and then said indifferently, I'm just a wandering ghost. A ghost that can do a lot of things. Grand Scholar Calvin was silent, but he was searching all his memories, hoping to find a trace of clues. In vain. Don't think about it. If I don't tell you, you won't know who I am. Madanzo chuckled and said, But I know who you are. Grand Scholar Calvin was still silent. Madanzo said indifferently, It doesn't matter if you don't talk. If you don't talk, I can just destroy this almost evolved great ancestor of void. Grand Scholar Calvin took a deep breath and said, What do you want to know? I don't know. Calvin shook his head. Madanzo smiled and said, I know. It's nothing more than killing the fake saint in the Free City, and then creating another saint through the resurrection ceremony of the saint. Then stealing this saint and then using the Free City as the nourishment, the garbage Celtic gods of the sunset. Grand Scholar Calvin's breath suddenly stopped. Madanzo pressed his head at this time and whispered with a smile, I said, I'm a wandering ghost. A ghost is always watching silently behind you. Since you know, there's nothing to say. Grand Scholar Calvin took a deep breath at this time and said, If you want to kill me, then kill me. But you can't stop this plan. Why should I stop it? Madanzo said coldly. What did you say? Madanzo smiled indifferently and said, What you want to steal is the Free City, and it has nothing to do with me. The ones who have to worry are the idiots in the Palace of Blazing Sky. Now, I'm curious as to what extent can a guy like you, born from a trashy god system, achieve? The birth of an outer god was Grand Scholar Calvin's biggest secret. But the mysterious young man in front of him not only revealed it, but also knew the purpose of the whole plan. This made Grand Scholar Calvin unable to find a clear clue in the chaotic state at this time. You're going to stand by and do nothing. He suddenly thought of an incredible possibility. I'm going to stand by and watch, but it's not my style to do nothing. Madanzo said casually, Your plan is just that. Skip it. I'm not interested. Instead, I'm more interested in your experience in this world. You want the pages? Grand Scholar Calvin frowned. Pages? Madanzo suddenly sneered. I don't know where Kerrigan got the Book of Gaia, but I think this silly woman probably still doesn't know how hot this book is. What do you mean? Your level is too low. You won't understand even if I tell you. Madanzo shook her head, then reached out and pressed the back of Grand Scholar Calvin's head again, and said indifferently, The truth. She closed her eyes, and the life experience of Grand Scholar Calvin in the Holy Light Kingdom began to replay quickly in her mind. After a while, Metatro slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of doubt flashed through his eyes. You don't even know how you were born. You even think that your will is strong enough to awaken? Metatro shook his head and said, Those guys in the Palace of Blazing Sky are a bunch of idiots, but don't you have some misunderstanding about them? Besides, they are also his children, okay? The Book of Gaia was given by Lily. Where did Lily get it? Madanzo shook her head again. After searching Calvin's memory, Calvin had temporarily lost consciousness. She slowly approached the curtain wall and stared at Messenger 1 inside. Just as Calvin said, it was not Calvin's own will to bring it to this place for Messenger 1 to devour, but it was a choice, an option. It was the choice of this world that made Calvin do this. A. Capture Shinji, complete Messenger 1 plus 20% completion of Messenger 1. B. Capture Meshi, complete Messenger 1 plus 20% completion of Messenger 1. Grand Scholar Calvin had two options at present. He chose option A, which was relatively simple for him. Madanzo was concerned about the completion of Messenger 1. From this option, it could be seen that Grand Scholar Calvin had been carrying out the completion plan of Messenger 1. This was probably the main line of all the options he got. This was a world with options. It was not the first time that Calvin came here. He came here earlier than anyone else. From the first impact, he had been here. Completing Messenger 1. Calvin took this as a clue to conquer this world. He guessed that when Messenger 1 was completely completed, the World Book page would appear. Calvin could actually stay here until the end. After all, so far, he had been a respected grand scholar in the Free City, an ascetic, and even 2 students from the sage family. But now, everything had been exposed to Madanzo. This option seems to be to speed up the completion of Messenger 1. But now it seems. Looking at the huge body in the solution, Madanzo muttered, no matter how I look at it, it seems to be giving me points. At the same time, a new option appeared in front of her. A. Destroy Messenger 1. B. Complete the completion of Messenger 1. There was only a very simple description, and there was no mention of any reward. It seemed to say that only after doing it, she would know what the follow-up was. Option A, just do it brute force. But option B. Madanzo couldn't help frowning. She couldn't feed Messenger 1. That was to say, if she followed Calvin's choice, feed Meshi? Madanzo shook her head and didn't choose for the time being. She had another thing to do. It was dim in a closed space full of despair. A figure with a lot of bites on his body was curled up in a corner. Ludic's eyes were dull. The wounds on his body had grown new granulation, but the recovery was very slow. This special physique also had a limit. It was impossible to recover endlessly. Suddenly, in the closed cell, a door slowly opened. A glimmer shot in. Ludic's dull eyes were instantly filled with despair and panic. He desperately shrank his body to the corner. Don't come here! Don't come here! Something was thrown in from outside the raised door and fell directly in front of Ludic. It was a necklace, the inheritance of the sage family. Holy glory! The door had been completely opened, but those crazy students who wanted to bite him didn't appear. Ludic subconsciously held the necklace in his hand. He seemed to see hope. Chapter 2259. Madanzo's conjecture about the Book of Gaia was that the book had collected the world fragments from the original world. The so-called Diary of a Little Girl was just a cover. This was the projection of some of the historical fragments of the original world to the original world through the contents of the diary. It might not necessarily be the real experience of the original world, but one thing was certain: there was no rootless duckweed. There must have been something that had happened, and it must have been something significant. Let's not talk about the other pages first. In the current page world, there is even a Void Shura that is about to complete its evolution for the Void Shura. Any immortal in the dimensional crevice would have a change of expression at the mention of it. Those who had intelligence could learn and evolve, and could even command all the Void original demons unconditionally were nightmarish existences. The Void original demons invaded the countries in the dimensional crevice, hunting down the immortal souls one by one. They especially liked to invade places with a large number of believers, such as the divine kingdoms of divine systems. Especially the kingdom of heaven, it could be said to be a disaster area. Madanzo claimed that she had killed hundreds of thousands of Void original demons that were of a higher level than the Void original demons, and it was not just empty talk. The kingdom of heaven at the beginning was not like the prosperous scenes of the kingdom of holy light, the Garden of Eden, the holy city sanctuary, the palace of blazing heaven, and so on. In the beginning, the kingdom of heaven was merely a small special zone that was situated amidst endless void primordial demon creatures. The kingdom of heaven had gone through a long war, going from being suppressed to a state of equilibrium, and then gradually clearing away the surrounding void creatures as it progressed step by step. And the turning point to reverse the extremely disparity between the two sides began with the acquisition of the new kingdom of heaven. A super shelter that could absorb the old kingdom of heaven, giving birth to the Garden of Eden, the holy city sanctuary, and even the kingdom of holy light, with extremely powerful functions. That's right, compared to the description of the kingdom of heaven, Madanzo was more willing to call it a shelter, a super shelter that required continuous payment of the protection fee. It was because of the appearance of the new kingdom of heaven that it could continue to grow, and even use the function of the new kingdom of heaven's pool of reincarnation to continuously create the angel army for the purpose of war, allowing the glory of faith to spread across the various subworlds. Such a super shelter was indeed powerful, and it was the kind of temptation that couldn't be returned after using it. Obviously, even he couldn't resist the convenience. But the price was also high. Otherwise, the Celtic gods might not have been destroyed. If the Celtic gods hadn't been destroyed and the Celtic gods hadn't been cast into the Holy Light Kingdom, there wouldn't have been the rebirth of Morgan and Merlin, and there wouldn't have been the revenge plan of these two outer gods. There wouldn't have been the appearance of the Book of Gaia. No, the Book of Gaia originally existed, but its appearance. I'm afraid it's not a coincidence. Madanzo frowned. It could not help but think of the last page world, the fate of the Holy Land world. Was all of this also part of the strings of fate that had been set up long ago? Even though Madanzo used to be the clerk of the Kingdom of Heaven and was known as the closest angel, she still couldn't avoid two things: fate and time. It's too fantastical to say that someone is playing a big game of chess. Since you can already control fate, what's the point of playing chess? Are you that free? Madanzo couldn't help but smile bitterly. If it's really a chessboard, such a game that spans the old era and the new era of the dimensional void, I'm afraid that he might not be qualified to be a chess piece. As for me, cannon fodder? TSK. If this is written in it, I'm going to scold someone. My golden finger, why aren't you online yet? Amusing herself, Madanzo slowly sighed and silently looked at Messenger, one who was soaked in the solution. She murmured, "So, could it be that the disappearance of the original world is related to the void creatures? It disappeared because it was invaded by the void creatures." On the curtain wall, a light screen moved over. On the light screen, a figure could be seen stumbling along the wall. This guy was injured all over, but he seemed to be in good spirits. Madanzo chuckled. The descendant of the sage family with holy glory and the reborn outer god. TSK, this is also a kind of reunion of fate, right? It's really fascinating. Just a little trick and it seems to be able to control fate. Then, how irresistible is the ability to really control fate? She slowly tapped on the light screen. The light suddenly turned on, and the strong light instantly woke up Calvin and Robert. From confusion to doubt to complete awakening, it only took a few breaths. This was no longer a place where they could observe Messenger, one, but it was still somewhere in the underground facility of the driver's school. "Robert, your injury?" "A few broken ribs, I won't die." Robert gritted his teeth and said, "My physique is enough to deal with it, but you..." Calvin was still paralyzed on the ground. His limbs had long been broken. "Take me out of here first." Grand Scholar Calvin said quickly. His face was pale, and he was also enduring the pain in his body. However, his memory of the observation room was vague at this time. He only remembered that according to the choice, he asked Robert to bring the student named Shinji here to feed the messenger, one. However, what happened after that was a blur. Who the hell is it? Robert also had a trace of horror at this time. He also felt strange. "I'm afraid that messenger, one, has been exposed." Grand Scholar Calvin said calmly, "We can't stay in the driver's school anymore." Robert nodded and directly carried Grand Scholar Calvin on his back. He used his clothes to secure him and hurriedly walked out. Robert ran all the way, so it was naturally bumpy. For Calvin, whose limbs were broken, it was even more uncomfortable. Every bump almost suffocated him. But Robert suddenly stopped at this time. Grand Scholar Calvin just breathed a sigh of relief. But when he looked up, his pale face instantly became uglier. On the road ahead, a man with wounds all over his body was leaning against the wall. At this time, he had a faint smile on his face. "Isn't this a small world, teacher?" "Ludic," Calvin instantly exclaimed. Leaning against the wall, Mr. Ludick took a deep breath. He clenched the inheritance item, Holy Glory, in his fist. A gentle holy power slowly flowed into his body, making his body that was about to collapse seem to be moisturized by rain. The self-healing ability of his special constitution was activated again, and the wounds on his body healed rapidly. Why are you in such a hurry? Where are you going? Mr. Ludick's breath gradually became ruddy. He smiled and said, I haven't thanked you for your hospitality yet. Ludick's eyes contained great murderous intent at this time. At this time, Robert could not help but feel his hair stand on end. This was his body's instinctive reaction to Ludick's murderous gaze. Ludick, listen to me. This is not for me. Grand Scholar Calvin took a deep breath. You should know that everything I've done in this life is all for the free city. Ludick walked over slowly. Robert frowned and unconsciously retreated. Grand Scholar Calvin increased the speed of his speech again. I'm building a new system that can allow ordinary people without pilot qualifications to pilot the God Devourer. Once this research is successful, it can be used in the Free City. The Free City will have a powerful force that can resist the outer gods. Ludick, however, paused and said faintly, Teacher, if you use these words to fool a Sashis, he'll probably believe it on impulse. But I'm different. Teacher, you should know who I am. I'm not lying to you. Grand Scholar Calvin took a deep breath. His eyes were sincere. It's because I know your special constitution that I need you to complete this research. Those failed products should be your treatment and can already accept higher frequency experiments. Soon I'll succeed. I know you're angry at my methods, but I can't do anything about it. You're too afraid of pain. If I tell you the truth, you definitely won't agree. But don't worry, after this matter is over, I'll give you a satisfactory explanation. Mr. Ludick was silent. Robert's eyes narrowed. He was ready to make a move at any time. His legs even began to exert force. However, Ludick sighed at this time. Teacher, do you know why I've always been so afraid of pain? Calvin frowned, but he still thought for a while and said, You once said that if you use your constitution to heal others, you'll suffer far more pain than the other party. There's a limit to a person's endurance, so I asked you to learn the ascetic's cultivation. You've been doing well and have a great tolerance for pain. Suffering far more pain than the other party is one thing, but it's not the most important thing. Ludick shook his head at this time. The real reason is that the pain that exceeds the limit will wake the other guy up. For example, now. Grand Scholar Calvin was stunned. Robert couldn't help but hold his breath at this time. Do you know why I can multitask? Ludick suddenly smiled. It's not because I'm talented, but because there are two souls in my body. Go! The moment Ludick's face bloomed with a devilish smile, Robert roared and instantly threw Grand Scholar Calvin out. Ludick's eyes instantly turned pitch black. He punched directly at Robert's chest, and penetrated it. You! Robert looked at the arm that penetrated his chest in disbelief. His face was full of horror. This page world didn't prohibit extraordinary power. As a sacred ability user of the Holy Light Kingdom, Robert had a super strong physique. This physique allowed him to maintain most of his mobility even if he broke a few ribs. However, this super strong physique was actually penetrated by Ludick's punch. This feeling of not having to pray to suppress my murderous nature is really good. Ludick showed a cruel smile. The last time I didn't have to worry about killing was when I killed a rabbit more than 10 years ago. If it wasn't for assakes. Let me have some fun now, okay? Ludick punched again. Robert's head instantly exploded. Blood and bone fragments bloomed like flying flowers. The walls, the floor. Calvin's face and body instantly turned red. Robert's body instantly fell, and then his body gradually faded and disappeared. In this regard, Ludick just glanced indifferently and didn't continue to pay attention. He continued to walk toward Grand Scholar Calvin. Calvin said in a trembling voice, So this is the reason why your prayer ability hasn't been high, petitioner. Ludic sneered. When I was 10 years old, I was already qualified for the title of holy disciple. Grand Scholar Calvin couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He was only 10 years old, and he had already reached the prayer power of a holy disciple. He had spent half his life on the path of an ascetic, and he didn't hesitate to change his will as an outer god, but he had barely reached this level. How terrifying was Ludic's murderous nature that he could become a holy disciple at the age of 10. The Holy Light Kingdom shouldn't have given birth to such a believer with such a huge murderous heart. Unless Ludic was also the reincarnation of an outer god like Kerrigan. Grand Scholar Calvin's thoughts were spinning rapidly, but Ludic had already walked over and directly stepped on his right leg. The bones of his calf were crushed little by little. Ludic wasn't in a hurry to directly break it. Instead, he took pleasure in torturing him, and the cruel smile on his face became clearer and clearer. Grand Scholar Calvin was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. In order to be able to enter the core of the Free City, he had already given up all the methods of a legendary mage and turned himself into an ascetic. His holy power was also powerful, but in the page world, he couldn't pray, and he couldn't get the power of the saint from the Free City to descend. He was just an ordinary person's body. Someone actually broke your limbs before me. I'm really unhappy. Ludic sneered. Teacher, you have to take responsibility for this. With that, Ludic stepped on the other leg of Grand Scholar Calvin. At this moment, a flash of light suddenly came from the end of the tunnel. Ludic suddenly turned around and punched out. The light that came toward him was actually a cannonball that was no less than the length of an arm. The moment the fist collided with the cannonball, a devastating explosion occurred in the entire tunnel. Boom, boom, boom. Collapse. Because of the explosion, the alarm system was buzzing in a tunnel leading to an underground facility that led to a hangar. At this time, Grand Scholar Calvin was being supported by two people wearing silver masks. Bring Kay or Lily, she has perfect data. Calvin said weakly but decisively, we can't wait any longer. The Dark World battlefront should be fully deployed. This world is about to come to an end. Finally, we have been waiting for this moment for too long. President Calvin. In the collapsed tunnel, a huge force instantly broke through the buried steel and stone. At this time, Mr. Ludic slowly walked out unscathed. Behind him, there were two pairs of illusory black wings that slowly shook. The aura of death surrounded him. But soon, this strong aura of death actually shrank bit by bit, shrinking. A hint of anger appeared on Mr. Ludic's face. He gritted his teeth and raised his fist. In his fist, he was holding the holy glory. Damn it, you are no longer a person of the heavenly state. You want to stop me with just an inheritance item. The light of the holy glory became stronger and stronger. The black illusory wings shook crazily but gradually faded. Ludic's expression changed rapidly between madness and calmness, until finally, he completely calmed down. He slowly sighed and then put on the necklace in his hand again. Angry, deadly sin demon king. Mr. Ludic stroked his chest and smiled bitterly. In my opinion, you are indeed an unfilial descendant. The alarm gradually stopped. Madanzo stopped controlling it. This observation room was not only an observation room but also the real center that could control the entire underground facility. At this time, Madanzo looked at the broken tunnel on the light screen and saw Ludic sitting on the gravel in a daze. A smile appeared on her face. TSK, so it's Samuel. I was wondering. Madanzo narrowed her eyes. When you were alive, you were beaten like a grandson. After you died and reincarnated, you are still someone's grandson. You are really a grandson. Madanzo casually pressed a button. A request to open the door of a hangar, approved. Chapter 2260. In that case, the person who got rid of Jamia was this new teacher Robert? Yulia was frowning. She had already returned to the student dormitory. On the way back, she lost Zhu while walking. Yulia searched for a few hours, but there was no sign of him, so she could only return helplessly. When she returned, Madanzo was already there, in its own room, holding a controller and playing a soccer game. This was a game where soccer balls collided with each other to see who was better. To be precise, its teacher Robert, who was authorized by Calvin. Madanzo said rather casually. He's also the one who has been secretly communicating with Jimia and constantly revealing information about the Dark World battlefront to Jimia. Yulia began to rub her bangs and began to think. Now that I think about it, Calvin is actually such a Calvin. He even created the Dark World battlefront. How long has he been in this page world? The page world should be in a cycle. He doesn't actually need to come too early. He just needs to choose a suitable node to descend. Madanzo thought for a while and said, for example, if you come 10 years ago and casually plant a small sapling, then you come again in the 3rd, 5th, and 10th years, the sapling will become a small tree, a healthy tree. That's true. As long as you create such an organization from the beginning, formulate a development plan, and train good people. Yulia nodded. There's no need to keep paying attention. Even if you fail the first time, you can come a few more times. 10 years ago, there will always be a time when you succeed. TSK, I didn't expect that the essence of this great scholar is actually also an outer god. In addition, the person who first attacked on the rooftop was also Robert. Madanzo said, the purpose of the arrow was not to kill, but to anesthetize Meshi. It intended to catch her to feed the messenger, one, under the school. Yulia's expression changed slightly. Senpai. Messenger, one, is under the school. Why did you come back? I can't do anything even if I stay in the school's underground facility. Madanzo blinked and said, I can't use myself to feed one, right? Don't worry. Without the headmaster's permission, you can't enter the emissary's observation room. Yulia couldn't help but look at Madanzo suspiciously. She thought for a bit and said, then what are your plans? What do you mean? Senior sister, Yulia said angrily, Messenger, one, are you going to destroy it or complete it? Madanzo suddenly rolled her eyes and said, what are you talking about? Let a void progenitor evolve into a void Shura in this place. Do you think life is not exciting enough, or do you think life is not fun? Are you going to destroy it? Senior sister, Yulia, blinked her eyes. She had lived for so long, and she had heard of the void Shura, but she had never seen it. When it was at its peak, it took advantage of a small dimensional void force being invaded by void creatures to kill a few void progenitors in the chaos, and then sold them to a guy who liked to study void creatures, making a fortune from the dead. She really didn't take advantage of the situation and looted the treasury of that small force. Madanzo shook her head and said, newbie, how can we do such an unkind thing? It's just staying underground and doing everything. Just because it's about to complete its evolution, it has to suffer an unexpected disaster. Isn't it unfair? I don't believe you. Senior sister shook her head angrily. Just take it that we can ignore Messenger, one, for the time being, but what about Calvin? You said that he has successfully escaped. I was the one who allowed him to escape, Metatro corrected. Senior sister, Yulia, also rolled her eyes, then sighed and said, Senior, what do you want to do? Madanzo suddenly said, from the first impact to the 100th impact now, it's all void creatures that came in. Messenger, one is a guy who is about to evolve into a void Shura. According to the information left by Calvin and the various legends about void Shura that we already know, it seems. Newbie, don't you think that our classmate Zhu Chu might already be a ready-made void Shura? Senior sister, Yulia, sucked in a breath of cold air. Void Shura. Boss is a void Shura? Wait, this doesn't seem impossible. Senior sister Yulia couldn't help but feel cold. The ultimate goal of the shop for all customers was to collect their souls. In other words, Boss has been harvesting souls all along. The void original demon in the dimensional crevice was the kind of retard that would go crazy when it saw a living soul. The void original ancestor had some consciousness, but only the void Shura had intelligence. I heard from Miss Yu Yi that the main material used to create the Black Soul Messenger's body was also extracted from the body of the void original demon. Rounding it up as a Black Soul Messenger, could he be considered a kind of void original demon? So, Boss might really be a void Shura? He just used a method that was different from the knowledge of the strong people in the dimensional crevice to harvest souls? Senior, I think I have a very dangerous idea. Ah! We lost. Madanzo threw the game controller at this time and said angrily, "How can 36D lose to 2A? Newbie, what did you just say?" "I'm going back to my room." Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head, her face faintly pale, and took the initiative to leave. But before she left, she suddenly said, "Senior, I suspect that there might be a hint of options on Julia's body." "What do you mean?" Madanzo frowned subconsciously. The senior sister pondered and said, "It's just a woman's intuition. But if you think about it this way, many things can be explained, such as Juju's behavior all along." Madanzo said subconsciously, "But he's just a character in the page, how can—" Senior sister, Yulia, said faintly, "What if we were wrong from the beginning? What if the people in this page world all have their own options, and our arrival just blended into this normal world? What if we just think that we're special? Why don't we think that way?" Madanzo opened its mouth. It really didn't think of this possibility. Senior sister, Yulia, had already gone back. Madanzo silently picked up the game controller and reloaded the game. The light on the screen kept changing on its face, but it murmured, "Everyone is making choices. How is this possible? This is an emissary? Pilot school, underground facility." After Mr. Ludick rested for a long time and recovered a lot, he began to move forward. This should be the underground of the school, but he didn't know how deep it was. Perhaps because of the tunnel explosion, most of the tunnels were now free of emergency lights. He could only follow these emergency lights and then came to a strange place. In a huge circular room, through the transparent curtain wall, Ludick saw a huge pale body. Suddenly, Ludick turned around and looked at the lights at the entrance of the observation room. He had a feeling that these lights were specially lit to show him the way. Someone deliberately led him to this place to find the emissary buried here. Ludick took a deep breath and began to walk in the observation room. His palm subconsciously touched the curtain wall, and instantly the curtain wall lit up. This was a curtain wall that could be controlled by touch screen. In an instant, hundreds of avatars appeared on the curtain wall. He clicked on the avatars one by one. In the secondary files, there were all the information of the corresponding characters and a video. It was the video of the corresponding characters being swallowed by the emissary in the container. Suddenly, he hit the curtain wall. He knew that all of this was done by Calvin. The anger in his heart was rising uncontrollably. He had to take a deep breath, sit cross-legged on the ground, and hold Holy Glory tightly with both hands, praying devoutly. The anger in his heart began to fade slowly. After a long time, Ludick slowly exhaled, and his eyes became clear again, almost, but at this moment, Ludick's face changed slightly. Accept the real you, you are the best. Release the original sin in your heart, you will get everything. Debut, the Demon King of Original Sin. B. Isn't it good to be a human? You have money, talent, and status. It's the same whether you work hard or not. Being the Demon King is really not suitable for you. It's better to be a happy salted fish. Please use your second soul to feed the emissary. 1. Looking at the two options in front of him, Ludick was speechless for a long time. These two options appeared like a joke, and there was no sincerity in them. The problem of having two souls had been troubling him. As a descendant of the sage family, he was undoubtedly proud. However, the original sin hidden in his body made him give up on becoming a real, holy disciple. However, people were contradictory. Although he was afraid of the existence of the original sin of anger, he would also feel confused because of the power of the original sin of anger. The options in front of him were still clear, but Ludic couldn't help but smile bitterly. At this time, if only he could say, "Only children can choose, I want both," how good would that be? A free sage. How should I choose? He silently held "Holy Glory" tightly and murmured as if he was praying. Then, the earth shook. Even though they were deep underground, the tremors were still very clear. Ludic's face changed slightly. On the ground, something seemed to have happened. Senior Yulia rushed out of the room, leaned against the wall, and looked down. On the floor below, Madanzo also poked her head out and pointed forward. The source of the earthquake seems to have come from that direction. Senior Yulia opened her eyes and said with a serious expression, "That place is the combat base. I went there in the afternoon." Just as the vibration became more and more intense, the alarm sounded in the entire second upper capital. In the city, every broadcasting station sent out the same emergency report. "Warning, warning! The impact has happened! Warning, warning! The impact has happened! All residents, please prepare to resist. Please survive." Senior Yulia shouted again. "Let's go and see." Madanzo had already rushed out, directly in the direction of the base. It didn't pretend anymore and flapped its 6 wings, moving as fast as a shooting star. After Senior Yulia landed on the ground, she couldn't help but breathe quickly. She couldn't keep up with Madanzo's speed at all. At this time, she saw that Madanzo was already standing still outside the gate of the base. She approached Madanzo, only to see that Madanzo pressed both hands on the gate at the same time and slowly pushed it open. In an instant, a huge smell of blood erupted. The two of them looked at each other. Madanzo frowned and said, "When you and Juju came in the afternoon, did you find anything?" Senior Yulia shook her head. Madanzo took a deep breath and said, "This place exudes a violent aura. It can't be wrong. There is a void progenitor here." Senior Yulia said in shock, "Progenitor? Senior, are you sure?" "I can smell this thing from a few streets away," Madanzo said in a deep voice, "but this guy's aura is very unstable. It should have just completed its evolution." The senior was stunned and said, "Calvin has one in the school, why does he also have one in the base?" "Oh no, Meshi." Meshi was recuperating in the base. "Senior, I can't let anything happen to Meshi for the time being. She is a character in my choice." After saying this, Senior's sister, Yulia, had already turned into a long smoke dragon. She didn't pretend anymore. Madanzo frowned. The pilot school had just found the one messenger, and the base was invaded by the messenger. Wasn't it too much of a coincidence? Slight explosions and the sound of machine guns came from the depths of the base from time to time. The people inside were still resisting. A. Please survive for 3 hours. B. Join if you can't win. Assimilate with the messenger and you will be reborn. She was still wearing the patient's gown. When the incident happened, Meshi woke up from her dream. She didn't even have time to put on her shoes before she picked up her weapon and entered the sudden terrifying battle. The enemy was the guards in the base. But the guards had mutated. Their eyes were red, and their faces were ferocious like mad dogs. Most of the people in the base had gone crazy, and only a few were resisting stubbornly. Meshi! A terrified voice rang out. Meshi quickly looked over and saw a young girl with a rifle in her hand running towards him at top speed. "You are Miss Millet from the picket team?" Meshi was stunned. "Why are you?" "I'm a trainee operator in the base." The girl quickly said, Today is my commute, but I didn't expect, at this moment, Meishi pushed Milei away and dodged a figure that was flying towards him. Let's deal with these first. Chapter 2261. Even the students from the pilot school were not as powerful as the well-trained base guards, not to mention a large number of guards. If these guards had not lost their minds and attacked with only one method, it would not be difficult to defeat them. However, Milei was able to break out of the encirclement by herself, which was already very rare. Meishi could not help but look at the girl from the school picket team. How much ammunition do you have left? 1 magazine left. Milei quickly said, there are still 7 bullets in the gun. The whistling sound of bullets and the roaring of the crazy guards continued, but the sound of bullets was getting less and less. There were not many people in the base who were still resisting. The situation was unprecedentedly bad. Meishi never thought that the enemies she had to face were not only the terrifying messengers, but also human beings. Moreover, they were the base guards who had been fighting in the front line to protect the humans. I tried to contact the survivors, but the situation is very bad. Milei's face was pale as she covered the communicator with one hand. All the exits are blocked. I'm afraid something happened in the control center. Besides, if this continues, we won't be able to hold on for long. Go to the hangar. Meishi took a deep breath and said, this is the only way left. Milei was startled and then nodded heavily. If Meishi could get on the God Eater, these guards would not be so scary. However, they were just the ultimate weapon against the messengers. Were they going to kill the humans? We can't let these soldiers have a chance to leave the base. Meishi said in a low voice, once they leave the base, it will be a great disaster for this city. I kind of understand why all the exits are blocked. You mean? Milei's face turned serious. The people in the control center are also. If it is not the most desperate situation, I believe they will not block all the exits and leave no chance for the people here. Meishi shook her head. Let's go. Without backup, we can only rely on ourselves. We should be able to enter the hangar through the ventilation window. Milei quickly said, I have seen the blueprint of the base. I hope we can succeed. There were traces of battle and corpses everywhere. But the situation gradually became quiet. After losing their target, the mutated soldiers began to wander around the tunnels. Perhaps the remaining survivors had already gone into hiding, fearing that they would attract the attention of the mutated guards. Madanzo didn't follow Senpai Yulia. Instead, it slowed down and the mutated soldiers pounced on it one after another before collapsing. Why would only a portion of the people mutate and go mad? It frowned and looked at the mutated guard on the ground. Could it be that it's random? Or is there some kind of pattern? In the depths of the base, there was an obvious aura of the great progenitor of the void. The disaster at the base was obviously caused by this great progenitor of the void. It wasn't scary to turn the guards into zombies. What Madanzo was curious about was how some of the people in the base were able to survive. But this question wasn't answered, because it could feel that the aura of the great progenitor of the void was still rising. The great progenitor of the void was not scary. It had really killed hundreds of thousands of them, or even more. But the problem was that at that time it was complete. It had a body, a soul, and a group of teammates who were unreliable but could at least fight. Now it was just a will. Wherever it went in the page world, it would be abused. It was very frustrated. I was too careless. If I had known, I wouldn't have followed the Book of Gaia in. Shaking its head, Madanzo smacked its lips and took out a pipe. The situation at the base was not without a solution. It just needed to kill the great progenitor of the void inside. Help! Help me! Help! Oh, you're still alive! A blood-stained hand was placed on Madanzo's shoe. It was a young guard whose arm was torn off. Madanzo suddenly squatted down, looked into the young guard's desperate eyes, and whispered, "Tell me, what do you see?" His eyes were still desperate, but in those desperate eyes, there seemed to be a glimmer of light. In the eyes of the desperate young guard, the strange young man with a pipe in his mouth seemed to be exuding a holy light. Hope. Hope, I see hope. I don't represent hope. Help me. The desperate young guard used the last of his strength and suddenly grabbed Madanzo's ankle. In the name of Medellin, I will save you. Madanzo reached out and gently touched the young guard's forehead and whispered like a dream, "You will be free from pain and despair and plunge into eternal silence and solitude." The young guard slowly closed his eyes with a smile on his face. His expression was one of satisfaction and serenity. I represent dead silence. Madanzo slowly exhaled and gently hooked her finger, and a small light ball slowly floated out from the young guard's forehead. He opened his mouth, and the small light ball fell into his mouth and swallowed it. Mosquito meat. Madanzo shook her head and muttered, "The taste is not good. Wait." As if he had discovered something, Metatro abruptly walked up to another fallen guard. But this guard had been severely injured after going berserk, and had completely lost the ability to move. He only had one last breath and was not dead yet. So, Madanzo looked at this mutated guy seriously and then muttered, "So." The window fell, and then two figures landed. In the hangar, only the emergency lights were on. It was dark red, and it was very quiet. Fortunately, this place should not be invaded. Madanzo quickly looked around, and then breathed a sigh of relief, and quickly walked to the landing platform in front of her. The landing platform was connected to a huge figure. Kurlet's energy has been replenished, Millet said quickly. But we haven't equipped the weapons yet. Also, the right wing was slightly damaged in the last battle, and we haven't had time to repair it. Lastly, there's the cockpit, Miley quickly said. At this time, there was still a clear drill mark on the door of the cockpit, and it almost broke through the door. The last battle was very dangerous, and Madanzo almost died in the hands of the messenger. You know it well. Madanzo looked at Millet while doing the activation on the landing platform's control panel. I used some of my privileges. Millet shook her head. If not, I'm afraid I won't have a chance to get close to the God Eater. Madanzo frowned. The second upper capital S that Tsang Lei is the God Eater. Millet's face darkened. Tsang Lei belongs to the president. Except for the president, it's a blasphemy for anyone to get on it. Madanzo was stunned. She remembered that the Tsang Lei's pilot had been replaced in the last few battles, but it was obviously not the time to talk about this. It's about to start, Madanzo said quickly. There should be a spare combat suit on the side, put it on first. You can't enter Kurlet's cockpit, so I can only use Kurlet's hand to hold you. Millet nodded, walked to the side silently, and put on the pilot's combat suit. Madanzo also changed here, and they were both girls, so there was nothing to worry about. The second upper capital S pilot school is actually very good. If possible, I hope to stay here, Madanzo suddenly said after changing. Millet looked at her with surprise. Madanzo smiled bitterly. You should more or less know the situation in my school. To become a pilot, one has to go through a war. But it's different in the second upper capital. From what I've seen, your school is really like an ordinary school. Although everyone is learning about driving, in fact, not many of them really want to be a driver, or rather, they don't even think about it. As I said, Tsang Lei belongs to the president, Millet said indifferently. That's why I feel strange. Madanzo sighed. The power of the student union is even higher than the school. As for the president, to be honest, I don't see anything good about her. She's just a person who only knows how to hide in her room and doesn't communicate well. Millet's face changed gradually. Madanzo waved her hand. I'm going up. The landing platform rose slowly and sent Madanzo to the entrance of the cockpit. Millet took a deep breath and suppressed the unhappiness in her heart. But at this moment, a black shadow suddenly jumped down from the top of the hangar. She immediately screamed, "Be careful!" Mei Shi's reaction was extremely fast. She was on the landing platform. Facing the figure that was flying down, she turned around and kicked the figure off the platform. However, at this moment, another figure came down from the other side at the same time. She was caught off guard and fell down from the landing platform. In an instant, 7 or 8 shadows rushed out from the corner of the hangar. They were all mutated and crazy guards. Madanzo was instantly drowned in this group of terrifying guys. Milei's face changed. She immediately took out her weapon and pointed at the mutated guard. She was about to save Madanzo. A. Save the lost Madanzo. B. Let Madanzo die tragically in the hands of the guards. No one is born to be the protagonist. You've already prepared yourself. After Madanzo dies, you'll automatically get the license to drive the Okurlet. There's actually an option at this moment. Milei's eyes were dazed. Her hand that was holding the weapon was shaking. Milei, shoot. Don't be afraid of hitting me. It's better than dying in the hands of these guys. Madanzo struggled hard and shouted at the same time. Milei's eyes suddenly changed. The shaky muzzle slowly stabilized at this moment. The crosshair was already fixed on Madanzo's face. Blue thunder belongs to the president. No one can touch it. But I also want to. Gritting her teeth, the girl's face showed a touch of madness. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of gunfire rang out in succession. Each bullet entered between the foreheads of the mutated guards with incomparable precision. These guards who had died after being shot directly collapsed. Madanzo crawled out from the corpses with difficulty. She gasped for breath and looked up with lingering fear. Yo, girl, did you miss me? A familiar voice, a familiar figure, and a familiar person. Yulia. At this time, the person who appeared in front of May she turned out to be Senior Sister Yulia. Senior Sister twirled her gun and then blew at the muzzle of the gun. She smiled and said, "Don't be obsessed with me, Yulia." Madanzo suddenly shivered. She threw herself at her senior and hugged her tightly. Madanzo's favorability +2. Madanzo's favorability +2. A large wave of favorability rose in her eyes, and the corners of Senior Sister Yulia's mouth curled up slightly. After this, she might really be able to unlock the private game between her best friends. Just thinking about it made her a little excited. Senior Yulia patted Madanzo's back, but she suddenly looked at Milei behind her. Milei was still holding her gun. When she met Senior Yulia's gaze, her body suddenly trembled, and she hurriedly lowered her gun. After lowering her gun, Milei seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then, she quickly walked over. "That's great, Miss Madanzo. It's all my fault. If I had been more decisive." Madanzo shook her head. "I was also confused at the time. It's not your fault. It's already good that you haven't been on a real battlefield." Milei remained silent. Madanzo didn't care for the time being. She looked at Senior Yulia and asked, "Yulia, how did you know?" "When the alarm sounded in Second Shangjing, I immediately thought of you. I was worried about you, so I came over." Senior Yulia continued to gain her favorability. Madanzo's ears turned slightly red. She gritted her teeth and said, "I'll activate Kurlet immediately. You and Milei come together. We'll talk after we escape from the base." "Okay." Senior Yulia nodded. The huge body lit up in an instant. Madanzo, who was sitting in the cockpit, seemed to have changed into a different person. Her gaze was calm. Kurlet then put down its left hand and signaled for Milei and Senior Yulia to go up. When Senior Yulia passed by Milei, she suddenly said in a low voice, "Put the gun on first. Be careful not to misfire." "I will." The two immediately walked up to Kurlet's left hand. "I'm going up." At this time, Meishi quickly said and controlled Kale Lot to directly break through the ceiling of the hangar. Layer by layer, it crashed into the hangar. In just a few breaths, a Kurlet broke through the surface and shot into the night sky. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the stars shone brightly. However, They didn't have time to appreciate it because when they looked down, they saw that the entire second Shangjing had turned into a sea of fire. How can this be? All over the city, people who looked like mutated soldiers appeared. Look! Mi Lei waved her hand and pointed. At the center of the base, a 100-meter-long sarcomatous tree grew out. The trunk was made of wriggling flesh, and the buds on the branches were releasing dark red spores. Messenger. Madanzo looked at the information about the sarcomatous tree on the screen in horror, and her expression turned pale. Chapter 2262. Sporadic resistance was unfolding in the second upper capital. The city was already a sea of fire, and the mutation had spread throughout the city like a deadly virus. Those spores. Senior sister, Yulia, shouted in a deep voice. Millie hurriedly opened the mask of her protective suit. You guys stay here. At that moment, Meshi had landed on Kurlet and put the two on the roof of a building. Then, without saying anything, she drove Kurlet toward that terrible tree of flesh. Millie subconsciously glanced at Yulia beside her and frowned. Then, she gritted her teeth and said, I'll try to contact the other survivors, as well as the base of the most important city, and ask for help. Senior Yulia, however, stared at the tree of flesh, or rather, the tree of flesh. Can't the school's defense system work? She asked in a low voice. Distant water puts out nearby fire. Millie shook her head. Besides, there aren't enough students to control such a situation. I hope Miss Meshi can successfully destroy it. I don't think so. Senior Yulia didn't say that out loud. Although she couldn't precisely discern the strength of the progenitor of void like Madanzo could, she could only vaguely sense it, and the extent of her perception was that it was strong, very strong as fried chicken. The tree of flesh in front of her already gave her the feeling that it was very strong. The eyeball-shaped emissary that appeared in the 100th impact wasn't the progenitor of void, but just a primordial void demon that was about to reach its growth limit. Meshi had almost been drilled to death, and now, facing the even stronger progenitor of void, she clearly didn't have much of a chance of winning. Can't Song Lei activate the code? Senior Yulia asked quickly again. If Song Lei could once again display the power it had when it knocked down the eyeball-shaped emissary, it should be enough to deal with the powerful progenitor of void together with Ukurlet, herself, and the unreliable senior 11th. I don't know. Mi Lei smiled bitterly. Ever since the headmaster took back the control of Song Lei from the student council, Song Lei is no longer under the student council's control. Calvin again. Yulia sneered. Then, she took a deep breath and said, I need weapons, lots and lots of weapons. The more powerful, the better. Most of the streets in this city should have defensive systems. Do you know where the most of them are? You plan to start it manually? Mi Lei exclaimed, Impossible. Without the orders from the central command, you can't even open the door. I'm asking you if you know. There's no time to explain. Yulia grabbed Meshi's arm. You just need to tell me, and you can stay here. Hurry up. Mi Lei's heart trembled when she saw the other party's eyes. Her finger trembled as she pointed at a place on the street ahead. The defensive system on the street is basically based on the intersection. There should be. Before she finished speaking, Yulia had already jumped over the wall on the roof and jumped down. Mi Lei was shocked. This building was at least 34 stories high. How could a person survive after falling down? She hurried to the guardrail and stuck her head out to look, but she couldn't see anything. Mi Lei fell to the ground in a daze. She could hear the sounds of the entire city bathed in despair. The screams seemed to be ringing in her ears. Mi Lei covered her ears in horror. Her school, classmates, family, friends, they might have all been buried in the sea of fire at this moment. It was so desperate, but she couldn't do anything. She could only watch everything happen. Why didn't you shoot at that time? Why didn't you? Mi Lei raised her head subconsciously and looked towards the source of the voice. Then, she revealed a confused expression. You seem to be that freshman? Black hair, black eyes, and a warm smile. It was that guy who was always by Shinji's side. Milei didn't pay much attention to this freshman. The only reason she remembered him was because the student council president had summoned him several times. Because she was concerned about the president's attitude towards this freshman, Milei subconsciously received some information about Shinji, as well as information about him. Zhu, if she remembered correctly, that should be his name. Why didn't you shoot? Wasn't it always your wish to be a pilot? Milei opened her mouth and revealed a terrified expression. The choice that appeared in front of her at that time, that should be her biggest secret. How did he know? You're not the only one. The young man in front of her shook his head. He came to Milei's side and casually placed his hands on the wall as he looked around. Many people here have their own choices. You, some of the students in the school, some of the people living in the city, and that person who was killed, Jamia, as well. Milei couldn't use the word fear to describe her feelings. She looked up blankly at the young man's face. It was just that the face she was looking at seemed to be extremely far away. Milei's eyes flashed with a confused expression. I don't understand. There's no right or wrong choice. No matter what you choose, it's your choice. As for whether you can achieve your ideal ending, it's up to you. After all, this is the second chance I've given you. Milei's gaze was still confused. Then Zhu in front of her gave her a different feeling from the first time she saw him. Could it be because he took off his ordinary black-rimmed glasses? Just as she was about to speak, she saw something unbelievable. The Zhu in front of her, who took off his glasses, suddenly flipped his hand. Then, a golden page appeared in his hand. What are you? It doesn't matter who I am. After all, this is just the past. He shook his head. But it's a miracle that we can talk like this. Milei was stunned. But he had already looked at her and reached out his hand to her. He whispered, I will find your story. Then, one day we will meet again. She instinctively reached out her hand to him. At the moment when their fingers touched, Milei raised her head slightly. Her eyes focused. Her confused expression recovered a touch of clarity. She murmured subconsciously, Your Highness. In the end, only his smile was left for her. She dissipated. In a special way, she completely disappeared from this world in the Book of Gaia. He looked back and saw a busy figure on the street. Suddenly, he whispered with a smile, Lady Nan, you're getting better and better. The door leading to the rooftop of the tall building slowly opened. A figure walked in slowly. He looked at everything here curiously. It seemed that someone had stayed here before. It was a familiar feeling that seemed right but was actually wrong. The city was crimson red, and the night sky was still as dark as ever. His eyes, which were covered by his black glasses, were suffused with a demonic golden light. He had been in human society for some time, but his observation of human beings was not enough. He only vaguely remembered that he came here for a certain matter. Almost remember, he whispered softly. Then remember quickly. A voice like an auditory hallucination suddenly sounded in his ears. There was no one around. The voice seemed to come from the bottom of his heart. Who is it? He looked around blankly. Everything in front of him was red. When leaving the hangar, a curlet didn't have time to equip too many weapons, but it had already rushed to the poisonous tree. On the surface of the squirming poisonous tree trunk, some strange outlines could be vaguely seen. They were the faces of the messengers who had appeared in the past impacts. The pilot was familiar with the information of each impact and learned from each battle. Meshi could easily tell that the outlines on the poisonous tree were the messengers who had been killed by the second upper capital city. This poisonous tree absorbed the remains of those messengers and grew into its current state? She instantly came to this conclusion. At the same time, the curlet's hand took out the high-frequency oscillation sword from the leg armor and directly chopped the trunk of the poisonous tree. However, the surface of the poisonous tree was extremely firm. Meshi was shocked. The part of the tree trunk that was attacked suddenly swelled up, and then a giant palm instantly reached out and slapped Caolot heavily. The body was hit by an unprecedented horrible impact and instantly crashed to the ground. After landing, Caolot hurriedly climbed up. However, at this time, a terrifying huge eyeball had already appeared in front of it. It was the eyeball-shaped messenger that was killed by Tsang Lei in the 100th impact. It was later named Demon Eye by the base. The eyes of the Demon Eye were like a whirlpool. In the cockpit, Meshi suddenly stopped breathing. This Demon Eye was also connected to the poisonous tree trunk. It was not destroyed. No, it was reborn with the help of the poisonous tree. In an instant, the whirlpool in the Demon Eye's eyes spun crazily. Meshi felt that her consciousness was drawn into the whirlpool and instantly lost all perception of the outside world. That dream! She murmured absent-mindedly. However, at this moment, countless roars sounded and pulled her out of the terrifying whirlpool of consciousness. Meshi immediately gasped and saw that the door of the cockpit had been broken open. She was exposed to the air. At this time, countless dancing tentacles reached out from the Demon Eye's eyeball and crawled into the cockpit. Bang, bang, bang! A large number of flames burst out from the Demon Eye's body. Those tentacles that invaded the cockpit were frightened and retreated one after another. Meshi! A desperate shout came. Meshi subconsciously looked at the only screen left in the cockpit. It was an intersection in the street. At this time, Yulia was standing on the barrel of a mortar. Her face was faintly pale, and her legs were even a little weak. It seemed that she could not stand steadily. But as Yulia waved her hand, the whole city was instantly filled with the sound of cannons. Like a meteor shower, countless cannons lit up at the same time and launched a terrifying attack on the poisonous tree. The cannons were not enough to break the defensive field of the poisonous tree, but the dead messenger that emerged from the trunk was not protected by the field. Under the attack of the cannons, the Demon Eye retreated step by step. Surprised and overjoyed, Meshi quickly retreated to the intersection where the mortar was located. Yulia, how did you activate the defense system? I risked my life. At this time, senior sister Yulia said weakly, the whole defense belt. I'm so tired. Unfortunately, ordinary cannons can't break the messenger's field. Meshi smiled bitterly. Although the city's defense system had been activated, and a large number of heavy weapons emerged from the ground, these weapons could only interfere with the messenger's movements. They could not cause any substantial damage to the messenger. Although Caolot could neutralize the messenger's field, he could not break the shell of the poisonous tree. Listen, Meshi. A special hole will appear on the messenger's body. That's its only weakness. Find it and attack it. Yulia said quickly, I'll support you with the most powerful firepower. Hole! It's the empty place of the soul. Yulia said hurriedly, this thing doesn't have a heart, and it needs to constantly devour souls to fill its emptiness. The empty place is the hole. Once you get close to it, you can feel it. It's a kind of attraction, like the whisper of a demon. This. Meshi was speechless. Yulia, how did she know? Don't ask. Yulia took a deep breath and said, this is our current combat power. It seems that this is the only way to defeat it. We don't have enough power to directly destroy this thing, so we can only attack its weak points. Remember, it's a special hole. Don't randomly attack any hole you see. Go straight for the root of the problem and kill it with one blow. I understand. Meshi gritted her teeth and turned around resolutely. Yulia took a deep breath again. Seeing Caolot rush out again, she stood on the barrel of the cannon and waved her arm. Ordinary cannons won't work. I don't know if Xing Chuang's cannons can withstand it. Whatever. I'll show you what the cannon god sect is like. Please, my big cannon. Instantly, the cannons in the sky poured out as if they didn't care about their lives. The defense system's attacks seemed to be fiercer than before. Caolot was crazily rushing toward the poisonous tree, but a large number of corpses of messengers appeared on the tree trunk and kept attacking it. However, every time it was about to be attacked, a large number of cannons would come to support it, giving Okurlet room to move forward. Even the central control system didn't seem to be able to react so quickly. However, Meshi didn't have time to think about this because she had successfully climbed to the top of the poisonous tree. Moreover, she felt the kind of call that Yulia said was like the whisper of a demon hole. Chapter 2263. Kong was hidden in the crown of the tree, but it wasn't directly exposed, it was hidden in a terrifying bloody mouth. The dense fangs were opening and closing regularly, like a grinder. There was one thing that Yulia didn't tell her clearly: the call from Kong was so unbearable. The moment Meshi got close to Kong, she felt weak all over and her thoughts stopped. It was as if a hole had appeared in her heart at the same time, and it was swallowing her soul. Her hands were trembling, and her heart was in a panic. It was as if something important was flowing out of her heart at this moment. Loss, sadness, and reluctance. It was as if a family member had passed away, as if she had lost her true love, as if her dream had been shattered. All the regrets became an abyss-like whirlpool that swallowed her soul. This was Kong. The poisonous tree in front of her was like a reflection of her soul that had lost something important. It was a collection of all the ugly things in a person's heart that had lost the good parts. Meshi seemed to hear the roars of chaos and violence, the cries of hesitation and despair, and the cries of someone else. Don't let it affect you. It doesn't know anything, and it's just a monster that can swallow everything. In the cockpit, Yulia's voice sounded crazily in her ears, and Meshi instantly shuddered. Kurlet was unknowingly dragged into the bloody mouth at this moment. The sharp fangs even pierced through the body's outer shell. More than half of the body was about to be crushed. Attack! In the cockpit, Yulia's voice sounded again through the communication device. Meshi didn't hesitate anymore, and her eyes were resolute. A huge light burst out from the crown of the poisonous tree. In the sky above, second Shangjing, a huge nebula seemed to be born in an instant. Everything stopped, and then a violent airflow instantly spread out, and a loud sound rushed to the sky. What swept over was not only the airflow, but also a huge amount of energy. The weapon platform fixed to the ground was instantly overturned. After the nebula and the loud sound, a huge mushroom cloud bloomed, and everything seemed to be drowned in light, heat, and fire. When the thick smoke gradually dissipated, only a small part of the poisonous tumor tree's trunk was left in the air that was distorted by the high temperature. Its remains were burning and scattered all over the second upper capital like fragments of a falling comet. The air was still filled with a scorching aura, and breathing was like swallowing fire. Senior sister, Yulia, lifted a stone slab and crawled out in a sorry state. Then, she directly sat down in exhaustion. Not only was she physically tired, but she was also mentally tired. The defense system of Xing Chuang's, second Shangjing, was not difficult, but to complete all of this in a very short time was undoubtedly an overload of work. In the last page world, she even gave the King of Swords a portion of the black soul body that cut off one of Dijun's arms. I feel like I'll be squeezed dry sooner or later. Yulia smiled bitterly. As a newbie in the shop, she seemed to have been held back by Ms. Maid when she was reincarnated, and the black soul body didn't seem to be of high quality. Of course, she didn't have any objection to this. After all, she was just a newbie, and they couldn't give her the best materials at the beginning. She could accept the accumulation of achievements and the black soul body iterations. After all, she was still in the probation period. Bam! At this moment, a branch of the poisonous tumor tree fell beside Yulia. With a length of 20 to 30 meters, it instantly smashed open the road. The branch was burning like black charcoal. Yulia shook her head. She was almost hit by this thing. She snorted coldly and kicked the black branch as if she was venting her anger. Unexpectedly, with this kick, the entire charred tree branch was directly shattered. It's burned quite thoroughly. Yulia shook her head and then her eyes froze. She saw that within the huge broken branch, a grayish ball of light floated out, a ball of light the size of a fist, and it instantly rushed towards her body. Senior sister Yulia's expression instantly changed. She didn't have time to react, and the ball of light had already entered her body. Then, a strange feeling made her expression turn strange. Can it be like this? She didn't know what had happened, but she felt that her black soul body began to repair rapidly. The weight of the arm that was cut off in the last world was instantly restored. Not only that, but she also clearly felt that the quality of her black soul body seemed to have improved a little. F***ck? Looking at the wreckage scattered all over the sky, Yulia shuddered. As if she had been injected with chicken blood, she suddenly bounced up and rushed toward the place where the wreckage was scattered. 1, 2, 3, 5. Including the first ball of light, Yulia circled around the wreckage and finally succeeded in digging out 5 balls of light that could strengthen her black soul body. Then, she directly swallowed them. Not only was her black soul body completely repaired, but it was also strengthened by as much as 50%. It was even better than smoking marijuana. She felt that the current her could defeat 10 of her former self. It didn't exist. It was just that she had obtained a new ability. That's right. Miss Yu Yi said that the black soul body was made from materials extracted from the body of the primordial void demon. Yulia was instantly delighted. Primordial void demons would appear in this world. One primordial void demon, or even the primordial void ancestor, would appear in each attack. Not only that, but there was also a void azura, lying under the driver's school. We're rich. Yulia's eyes shone with excitement. How was this a hell instance? This was clearly a treasured place for her to level up. It was simply a free benefit. Not far away, a figure quietly looked at the excited senior sister, Yulia, and a hint of a smile appeared in his eyes. What kind of smile was that? It was probably a smile that said, "If you want to run fast, you have to give me some meat to eat. Just take it as a temporary reward. Keep working hard, Lady Nan." Meshi. The cabin door was pried open with an iron rod. Senior Yulia found Kurlet, who only had the upper half of his body left, under the trunk of the tree of poisonous tumors, and she hurriedly pried open the cockpit door that had been deformed. In the cockpit, Meshi heard the sound and woke up from her short coma. "Yulia, you did it!" At this moment, Yulia reached into the cockpit and carried Meshi out. "You did it! You broke a socket?" Meshi smiled. However, she was extremely weak at this moment, so she allowed Yulia to carry her. The two of them left the cockpit and landed on the ground, sitting casually. In the distance, a group of helicopters was slowly approaching. They seemed to be the rescue team or something else. Usually, they were the rescue team that came from another base. Yulia didn't pay too much attention to it. She just kept looking at the huge wreckage of the tree trunk, wondering if she could dig out another upgrade material from it. At this moment, Meshi looked at the broken Kurlet and gradually became absent-minded. "What are you thinking about?" Yulia suddenly asked. "Are you feeling pity for Kurlet?" Meshi shook her head. "As long as the core is intact, it can be repaired. I just never tried to damage it to this extent. Now that I think about it, perhaps as a pilot I'm still not capable enough. However, you have indeed succeeded in knocking down this big tree." Senior sister, Yulia, began her great undertaking of gaining favorable impression points. "Don't belittle yourself," Meshi said. "It wasn't me. Although I resisted Osakit's call, Kurlet's attack didn't work. It's just that for some reason, Osakit suddenly cracked, and I found the opportunity to explode Kurlet's power furnace. It suddenly cracked?" Yulia frowned subconsciously. She pondered and looked around. She saw a pure white feather slowly floating down from the sky at this moment. It landed on a rock, and then gradually dissipated. "Sword of feather." Could it be Senior 11th? Indeed, ever since they separated at the base, she hadn't seen Madanzo. At this time, a strong wind blew, and a helicopter slowly landed. Then, a group of soldiers quickly walked out. "We are the troops from the base in the neighboring city. We received a distress signal. More victims' corpses were thrown on the ground, waiting to be excavated." After the huge impact disaster, a second upper capital was like a wasteland. Several small shelters nearby sent rescue troops one after another. Almost all the bases in the second upper capital were destroyed, and only a few managed to escape. Only a few soldiers were left. Because they were commuting outside before the disaster, they managed to avoid the disaster. Second upper capital's base had lost its commander, and it could only be temporarily taken over by the rescue troop. The fire in the city had not been completely extinguished until dawn, and the number of casualties was uncountable. Although the tree of poisonous tumors had been destroyed, Kert had completely lost its ability to fight. There was no possibility of it being repaired in a short period of time. This victory came with an unbearable price. When Yulia returned to the pilot's dorm, it was already the afternoon of the second day. Half of the dorm was burned black by the fire. There was no electricity or water. "Senpai, are you there?" "Senpai, I brought some supplies back." "Senpai." Yulia pushed open the door to Madanzo's room, but there was no one inside. "Shinji-san, are you not here?" Meshi's voice came from behind her. The base had already been destroyed, and they didn't even know if there were any hidden dangers. Naturally, it wasn't suitable for Meshi to continue recuperating in the base. Although the rescue team had provided her with the best service, she still insisted on returning here, to travel together with Yulia. Of course, the rescue troops didn't want to let them go, but as the pilot, Meshi's military rank was higher than the commander's. Could it be that during the impact? Meshi had a worried expression. She knew that Yulia and Shinji-san had a good relationship. "It's fine." Yulia shook her head. "Shinji-san definitely won't die. He's quite smart." "But no matter what, Shinji-san is still just a child." Meshi smiled wryly. "At this moment, even if he's a child, he can still do many things that only adults can do, Shinji-san." Meshi couldn't help but pause in surprise. She saw a small boy walking over with 2 large shopping bags in his hand. "Welcome back. What are you doing?" Yulia looked at him suspiciously. "I'm going to get some relief supplies." Madanzo waved the shopping bags in his hands and said, "The neighborhood committee in the nearby street organized this, so you won't get any if you're late. I've already given you your share. Come, let's split it. Anyway, it's great that everyone's fine." It was impossible to restore the power supply immediately, and the same went for the tap water. That night, the fire in the city was finally put out, but the city also fell into darkness. Yulia lit a candle at this time, held it in her hand, and approached Madanzo, as if interrogating him. "Senpai, did you cut open the void progenitor's aperture?" "Yes." Madanzo directly admitted. "I found a good position and cut it open. Actually, there was no need to self-destruct." Yulia suddenly asked, "You found the pages? Why do you say that?" Madanzo asked in surprise. Yulia frowned and said, "Isn't it? The second Shangjing was almost destroyed, and the void progenitor fought such a difficult battle? Do you have some misunderstanding about the way the pages appear? Isn't it?" Yulia was silent. She didn't have any misunderstanding. It was just that the pages were bound to appear after the battle. It had been like this since she first experienced the page world of the Crayon Kingdom. It was just that Madanzo didn't have to lie about the pages. Yulia suddenly sighed as if discouraged. "Well, I worked for nothing. You seem to have grown a little." Madanzo suddenly said at this time, "Did something good happen?" Speaking of this, Yulia suddenly became spirited and quickly pressed Madanzo's shoulders with both hands, directly pressing it to the ground. Her eyes were shining, and she said in a sweet voice, "Senpai, let's go to school tomorrow. I haven't seen the void azura that you said is about to evolve." Madanzo blinked. But at this time, the door suddenly opened. "You received a letter from the student council." At this time, Meshi was holding a communication device, and standing at the door in astonishment, staring blankly at the scene of a woman on top of a man on top of a woman. Meshi's favorability, -1, Meshi's favorability, -1. Meshi felt disgusted. Meshi felt disappointed. Meshi felt uncomfortable. Yulia looked at the instant messages that kept refreshing in front of her eyes and gulped. Can I explain? Yulia. Shin-san is still just a child." Meshi's face was ghastly pale. "Yes. I'm still just a child." Madanzo nodded and was quite serious. "Although it said that there will be a cannon after the battle, you actually wanted to use it on me? You motherf ****. Chapter 2264. After the impact, the second upper capital city fell into a temporary vacuum, but everything was quickly recovering. The student union of the pilot school soon stood up. In this unfortunate disaster, according to preliminary statistics, a total of 27 teachers and staff members were killed, 19 were injured, and 11 were missing, including Mr. Calvin. First, there was a heavy mourning. The students who could come all came. In their classrooms, they listened to the broadcast of the student union and mourned for the dead. But most of the classrooms were empty. The campus, which was usually noisy, was now less than 1/5 of its usual population. "Please work together to protect our second upper capital city. From now on, students who have the ability to participate in the rescue work in the city. The student union will arrange a support area for you. Please report according to the time." No one had any complaints. Everyone wanted to contribute to their homeland. After a short gathering, the students who received the support information began to leave one after another to participate in the rescue work in the city. They were all juniors of the pilot. Even though there was only one Songlei, and more than 99% of the students might not be able to board it once in their lives, they could still operate the general heavy equipment freely. "I can't operate the God Eater, but I can operate the excavator." On the construction site, a brown-yellow body was quickly moving large stones at this time, helping to search for survivors who were buried alive. Although there was only one at Songlei, there were many training bodies in the pilot school. As the pilot of Kurlet, Meshi could also operate the training body with Songlei as the blueprint. Today she was very popular. Here. On the ground, Yulia was holding a pointer and directing the training body to work. But the training body obviously didn't pay attention to this kind of command, working hard on its own. "Oh? It seems that there is a little conflict between you two? Isn't it because of you?" Senior Yulia rolled her eyes in annoyance. This Senior 11 seems to be the kind of person who doesn't mind watching a show, and he even knows how to fan the flames. In the end, Meshi didn't listen to Yulia's explanation, and she didn't say a single word to her until now. However, her favorability towards her had already stopped dropping. It seems that after a series of efforts, the lower limit of favorability is already quite high. Senior sister, Yulia thought to herself happily. However, the option of Meshi's romance was still open. She didn't know when it would be completed. The key was that Zhu was still missing. The students from the pilot school didn't find it strange that some of their classmates were missing because of the impact disaster. Because suddenly there were many fewer people around them. Some people's deaths had been confirmed, but there was no news of others. They subconsciously didn't ask about these things, because if they didn't ask, they wouldn't know. Perhaps one day the important people would appear safely. Speaking of which, during the last impact, Zhu Dao also disappeared, right? Madanzo suddenly said. "Senior, what do you mean?" "I'm afraid there will be another impact." Madanzo sighed. Senior sister, Yulia, was about to say something, But at this time, her communicator suddenly rang. With a strange expression, she said, "It's Ludic looking for me. He said he has something to tell me?" "Principal. It's great that you're fine." Principal was Ludic's title in the Free City. Hearing this familiar title, and looking at this female student, who was one of the most outstanding Holy Maiden candidates in the City of Freedom Academy, Ludic couldn't help but feel a sense of vicissitudes. He said with a bit of bitterness, "Seeing that you're fine, I'm also relieved." Senior sister, Yulia, hurriedly said, "Principal, I heard that Sir Calvin disappeared. What happened? He should have escaped this disaster." Ludic shook his head and said, "But I don't know where he is right now. Do you have any news about him?" Senior sister shook her head, indicating that she didn't know. Ludic fell silent. No one knew what he was thinking. The senior said, "Chancellor, is there something important that you're looking for me for? Did Calvin plan to make you the new pilot of Tsonglei? He did say that, but now—" Senior sister, Yulia, smiled bitterly. "I don't know what to do now. You have to get on to Tsonglei." Ludic took a deep breath and said, "The second upper capital has lost its ability to resist. If the next impact appears, we will need the power of Tsonglei." Senior sister, Yulia, frowned. "Let's not talk about the fact that Ms. K. Air Lily is very good at controlling it. Even if Ms. K. Air Lily can't do it, I remember that the president of the student council is?" K. Air Lily disappeared. Ludic said in a deep voice, "As for the president of the student council, she refused to drive at Tsonglei again." "Why?" Senior sister, Yulia, was stunned. That president should have been pulled down from the position of the first pilot by Sir's dirty tricks. As for the qualification to drive the Tsonglei, shouldn't it be a character setting that he yearns for? Ludic smiled bitterly and said, "I asked her as a teacher and she refused me. The reason is that she doesn't want to use something that has been used by others." Senior sister, Yulia, widened her eyes in disbelief. "Something that has been used by others? Tsonglei. Is it something like lipstick? In short, you must familiarize yourself with the operating system of Tsonglei in the shortest time possible." Ludic took a deep breath and said, "We have already entered the login requirements for you. Yulia, I have a premonition that the next impact may appear again very soon." Senior 11 also said something similar. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head. "I will protect myself and board Tsonglei, but I don't understand. Why me?" Ludic said, "Calvin and I have done research before. You and K. Air Lily have a much higher adaptability to Tsonglei than the students in the pilot school. Maybe it's because you don't belong to this world." "I understand." Senior sister, Yulia, nodded. "Then what should I do now?" "Put down your work. I will help you familiarize yourself with the operation of Tsonglei as soon as possible." Ludic said with a serious expression, "I have called some students back to the school. They will also help you." Most of the students were from the student union's picket team. They were skillfully standing on various posts, supporting the posture of Tsonglei in all aspects. On the training ground in the school's underground facility, senior sister, Yulia, wore a tight combat suit and sat in the cockpit of Tsonglei. She listened to Ludic's instructions while hitting the training target. It wasn't the first time she had seen this kind of mecha. In the evil spirit page world, senior sister, Yulia, had seen them before. But at that time they were called Dawn combat suits. Not God Eater like here. But in essence they were all the same type of thing. According to the development of the evil spirit page world, could there be 5 God Eater in this page world? But so far only Meshi's Kurlet had appeared. First combat suit, Argonaut, second combat suit, Kurlet, third combat suit, Althea, fourth combat suit, Alpha, and the last combat suit, Kauros. That brother Xiaoya boarded. Could it be that Tsonglei was Kauros? But they looked completely different. When she was in the evil spirit page world, she observed the last hero, Kauros, at a close distance, so she could clearly tell. It was becoming more and more plausible. Unknowingly, she used Star Creation Warlock on Tsang Lei. By the time she reacted, Tsang Lei had already been given a new life. On the training ground, even though senior sister, Yulia, who was the pilot, was slacking off, Tsang Lei didn't slack off at all. It jumped around the training ground and quickly knocked down training targets one by one. Everyone in the control room was stunned. These stats are off the charts. Even when the president was piloting it, it was still. Yeah, it's already so powerful without using the new system developed by the principal. If the new system is activated, its combat power will break through the sky. They didn't know that there was an ability called Star Creation. At this time, Tsang Lei had already quietly become a creature of star creation. But facing Yulia's performance, Ludic frowned. The other students could treat Yulia as a genius pilot, but he couldn't. No matter how talented a person was, they couldn't create something out of nothing. It seems that you still haven't confessed something, Yulia. I was too careless, I just wanted to give it a try, but I didn't expect. Yulia saw everyone's reaction and couldn't help but feel a headache. After the upgrade of the Black Soul Body, Star Creation's ability also increased. It was much smoother than before, and the shaking time was shortened by nearly a third. Instead, she was more interested in the Void Azura. That was about to complete its evolution hidden under the school. She wondered if she could dig out more upgrade materials from that thing. Amazing, this can be called the beauty of machinery. In the past, I always thought that transforming machinery into a humanoid form didn't conform to dynamics at all. Now it seems that I was too naive. A humanoid body is so cool. In addition, the combination of Star Creation's technique and machinery is also very interesting. Right? They say that mechas are men's romance. Can't women do it? Yulia nodded in agreement. Besides, women can't do it. I want to practice boxing. A woman's future can also be the sea of stars, okay? Oh, you have great ambitions and a bright future ahead of you. NN. NN? In the cockpit, the moment Yulia nodded, her expression changed slightly. Although it was a drastic change, she quickly looked around as if she had seen a ghost and even felt a chill on her back. This familiar feeling, and this cheap voice, why do I have a sense of déjà vu? Could it be? Yes. It's me again. Desolate? What the F asterisk CK? In the cockpit, Yulia instantly screamed, and her whole body trembled. Desolate? Prince Desolate? The Holy Land's page world. Prince Desolate? On the training ground, Tsang Lei suddenly stopped moving. He stood there motionless, and there was no response to the communication call. Everyone couldn't help but stare at the screen in surprise. What they didn't know was that Yulia in the cockpit also widened her eyes in surprise and said with a trembling voice, why are you here? I followed you here. Followed me? Yulia was stunned. The voice that seemed to come from the bottom of her heart slowly sounded, didn't I ask you before? Since you people from the outside can come in, does that mean that we, the people from the inside, can leave as well? Do you still remember? She did say that before, but that was when she was captured by Prince Desolate and injected with a lot of needles that could make people feel good. At that time, almost all of her secrets were exposed to Prince Desolate. Even though she was very conflicted, she didn't hold too much grudge when she thought that they would have nothing to do with each other after leaving the page world. However, yes, you didn't give me a clear answer, but I have a strong desire for knowledge. If I don't understand it, I won't be able to sleep at night, so I just tried some things. What do you think? Am I awesome? But when did you do it? At that time, didn't I pat you on the shoulder and casually send a strand of thought in? Prince Desolate's voice sounded again, but your body is really strange. When you were in the virtual spiritual world, you would answer all of my questions, but after realizing your body, you were trapped in a hazy void. It took me a lot of effort to be able to talk to you. In other words, this bitch used her body as a springboard to steal from the Holy Land page world, and she even succeeded? She can do this? Yulia slowly sighed. She felt that she needed to think about the current situation. Are the people in the Holy Land page world so awesome? She can cross over on her own? She couldn't help but shiver. She was afraid of Desolate's ability. At this time, Desolate said with a hint of excitement, "The structure of this body is really interesting, much more interesting than Annihilator. TSK, I also want to make one to play with. I already thought of a name, let's call it Cowrose." What is this situation? Chapter 2265. The door of Vatsang Lai's cockpit suddenly opened, and an anxious face suddenly appeared in front of Yulia. It was Ludic. The cockpit door that was forcibly opened was still steaming at this time, but his hands tightly grasped the door. Yulia? Your hand, are you okay? I'm okay. Temporarily lost consciousness. Airsick? In the lounge, Ludic looked at the other party suspiciously, as if he couldn't accept this kind of explanation. I actually feel airsick in 3D. Yulia smiled bitterly and sighed. I didn't expect to feel so strong in the cockpit. Ludic couldn't help but frown, but your control level is very high. Maybe I'm too nervous. Senior sister, Yulia, shook her head and said, "Actually, I couldn't hear what you guys were saying at all. I was just operating mindlessly and using everything that I could think of and know. As for the rest, I don't know anything else. Maybe I'm too anxious." Ludic nodded. Anyway, rest well. Today's training is over. I'll send someone to send you back. I understand, Principal. After Ludic left the lounge, senior schoolmate Yulia let out a sigh of relief. She had lost control of herself, and had almost lost her mind because she was scared by that bastard prince. There was no one in the room. Yulia couldn't help but whisper tentatively, "Are you still there, Your Highness Huang?" "Just call me a Huang. That's what royal sister and she calls me." Silence. After a long silence, Yulia tentatively asked again, "Huang, what are you going to do now?" She felt uncomfortable letting this guy's consciousness stay in her body. Even if he said that her body was chaotic, and that he could only communicate with her consciousness. "Let's not talk about this for now." Prince Desolate's voice sounded again. "I need a body. I can't do anything with my current appearance. Where am I supposed to find a body for you?" Yulia couldn't help but frown. "Use your star creation technique, but don't use all of it." Prince Desolate said slowly, "Just edit the activity ability, there is no need to give the behavior logic, and then let me take over. Your star creation technique has some things, this level shouldn't be difficult for you." Not only was it not difficult, it was simply too easy. The star creation technique was originally developed from the soulless method of dealing with dead objects, but this guy, Senpai Yulia, was convinced that she had simply provided him with some concepts of star creation warlock. The person who could instantly grasp the essence of the star creation technique seemed to be the boss? "Wait, you really don't have any abilities now?" Yulia's eyes suddenly lit up. Prince Desolate sighed and said, "Yes, this is beyond my expectations. If I had known, I would have transmigrated here with my original body. I can't do anything now. Let's go. I'll get you a body first." She immediately became spirited. In the evening, a guy wearing a Qingtian doll mask walked into the office of the principal of the pilot school. However, the person sitting here now wasn't Principal Calvin, but Ludic. As for why he was here instead of other teachers with higher positions, it was purely because this was an instruction from the student union. Before Headmaster Calvin succeeded in seizing power, the pilot school had always been under the rule of the student council. Even the former headmaster was just a worker with a slightly better reputation. Has Yulia been sent back? Ludic saw Mr. Chintian, his personal driver. It seems to have taken a long time. Mr. Driver slowly said, when the lady passed by a convenience store, she went in to buy something. What was it? Ludic asked subconsciously. A black and white teddy bear, Mr. Chintian said indifferently. Teddy bear. Ludic raised his head in surprise, then immediately shook his head and said, Is there still no news of Principal Calvin? There is no one in Principal Calvin's house until now. I see. Ludic nodded. I will stay in the school today, you can get off work. Then I will leave, Mr. Ludic. Looking at the Chintian doll. Leaving, Ludic couldn't help but sigh. Once upon a time, he always had a capable secretary by his side. Lavelle, he doesn't seem to have entered the book of Gaia. Ludic lowered his head and pondered. In the room, Yulia blinked. A black and white ragdoll bear blinked its eyes as well. Yulia's eyes suddenly turned into crescent moons, and she said with a smile, Your Highness Famine, how is it? Are you satisfied with this body? This is the most expensive one. I treat you well, right? Is it because you treat yourself well? Prince Famine's voice came out from the teddy bear's mouth. I heard that there was a noble mother who often brought a teddy bear with her because of her daughter's lack of ambition. She would abuse the teddy bear to vent her dissatisfaction and maintain her image as a good mother. How could I? Yulia's eyes widened. Then, can you put me down first? The teddy bear blinked again. At this moment it was tied up and hung under the lamp in the air, and a candle was lit on the ground. Senior sister Yulia was already on cloud 9. At this time, she directly grabbed the head of to waist with one hand and squeezed it. You are a prince. Of course, I have to serve you well. The puppet Famine sighed. Senior sister Yulia immediately said in a despicable tone, Your Highness, do you want to take a bath first, or do you want to drink water first? If you want to take a bath, I can throw you into the washing machine. If you want to drink water, it must be difficult for you to suck it up with your current body, right? That's it? Famine shook its head. Yulia sneered and was about to move. However, the moment she stood up, she found that she couldn't move. Her expression changed slightly, and she instinctively wanted to turn into gray mist, but she still couldn't move. This is... Yulia's eyes turned flustered. Yeah, a godless realm, too. 0. You've tried it before. Didn't you say that you have no ability? Do you believe me just because I said so? It's because I don't believe you that I used a doll to make your body. The rope wrapped around Famine began to loosen little by little. The loosened rope seemed to have a life of its own, and it wrapped around Yulia's body. After a while, Yulia was hung under the lamp, and Famine lit a row of candles on the ground. Obviously, to be safe, I already used a non-aggressive doll, so why did things still turn out like this? Yulia looked at the black and white doll standing in front of her sadly, and she felt like she had nothing to live for. I can't play anymore. Yulia sighed. Why is the power of your royal family so strong? Isn't your star creation technique also unrestricted? Prince Desolate chuckled. Besides, what are you thinking about? This is the world after death. That my sister is in charge of. Is it strange that I can move freely here? What did you just say? Yulia was instantly stunned. What did you say, is this place? Famine blinked and said, When you were in the Holy Land, didn't you ask around? What Gaia controls is death. Yulia was stunned, and then she said in shock, You mean, these two worlds are connected, and they aren't separate evolutions? Even evolutions need to follow the basic rules, okay? Famine said in a bad mood, I won't give you anything. It's just a piece of nothingness. What can you evolve? But you? Senior sister Yulia looked at the other party in surprise. Is this guy really just a character mentioned in the book, and not his real body? I don't think this is my real body. Famine sat down at this time and crossed his arms. He seemed to be answering and muttering to himself, if I am my real body, I don't think I need to use you as a springboard to come to this world. Don't look at me like that. According to my research on the power of the royal family, it should be so powerful. But in fact, we have a so-called upper limit. Since you told me that we are in the Book of Gaia, this upper limit has existed. Yulia's brain was buzzing. Famine didn't stop. Then I speculate that the power of the royal family is indeed so powerful, but the Book of Gaia's description of it can't be complete, or its upper limit can only withstand the current level of royal power. But this doesn't have the nature of royal power. Nature? Yulia swallowed her saliva. You mean fate? Since it is fate, it is naturally not bound. Famine looked at Yulia indifferently. Fate is everywhere. Even a stone has its own fate. Why doesn't a character in a book have a fate? In my opinion, fate is a conceptual power. As long as this concept exists, it shouldn't be limited to the form it shows. Yulia's brain was getting more and more painful, but she insisted. But you shouldn't be glorious, son? Moreover, you are the one who jumped 2 pages of the world. Famine suddenly chuckled and said, according to your understanding of celestial bodies, why do you think the moon also has light? Sometimes those who control fate can't see it clearly. Instead, it is the mirror that can understand it better. Besides, I just happened to know about the Book of Gaia from you, so I had these guesses. If it were Sister Huang or my brother, perhaps they would be able to jump easily without using a springboard, right? Yulia took a deep breath and said, actually, I have seen you once in another world. I know. Famine nodded. When I was interrogating you in the virtual mental world, I asked you about it. It started when you had memories. Yulia immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Famine suddenly narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, apart from the so-called shop, you are quite honest. As for the shop, it should be a power that can easily control fate. I am more and more curious about what it is. The longer I stay in this world, the more my inspiration becomes. If the Book of Gaia is a record of the past, then outside the book, do I still exist? Has the me outside the book become the past, or do I still exist somewhere? Can the me in the book also meet the real me? What kind of expression will he have when he sees me? TSK, I originally thought that my life was fixed in the palace. It didn't matter if I worked hard or not. Now, it seems that the outside world is still very interesting. If I can really leave the Book of Gaia. This is a madman. No, this is a guy more terrifying than a madman. Not only did he easily accept the setting that he was just a character in the book, but he even wanted to break through the restrictions of the Book of Gaia. This Prince Famine should only be an evolution of the Book of Gaia. But the evolved Prince Famine was already like this. Wouldn't the real Prince Famine be even more troublesome? Or perhaps he had already done something. How about it? Help me leave the Book of Gaia. The doll Famine suddenly floated in front of Yulia and said with a chuckle, then, in exchange, I will fulfill your ambition. I don't know what you are talking about. Yulia's heart suddenly trembled. The doll Famine narrowed his eyes and said, you yearn for freedom, true freedom, and at the same time, you also yearn for great power. You are an absolutely selfish person. Subconsciously, you want to replace a woman and become the partner of the boss in your mind, right? Because you know that as long as you can replace that woman and become her partner, you will be stable. In the end, you can even replace the boss. And you will be able to get everything. These are the ambitions hidden in the deepest part of your soul. Yulia's heart trembled, and a great feeling of horror suddenly attacked her. Her throat swayed slightly, and she slowly sighed. Your Highness, Yulia slowly said, your ability to instigate a rebellion is not very high. The doll, Famine, smiled casually and said, "That doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with whether you really want to do this or not. I only need to tell you this objectively, and one day, you might suddenly have this idea. I am just planting a seed of ambition in you. I just moved my lips, and maybe you will really rebel one day. You really have a bad personality." The doll, Famine, said, "Let me be your guardian angel of love. From now on, I will be on your side." Yulia instantly felt that this was unreal. A few hours ago, she was clearly doing something. Oh, she was practicing the driving ability of Song Lei, and thinking about how to continue to pursue Meshi. How come it suddenly changed to a plot where she had to defeat the Empress and replace the Empress? Was there something wrong with the script? What is so strange about this? The doll, Famine, suddenly said, "There are so many potential candidates for the crown princess, but there has always been only one crown princess. If you don't fight, you will have the last laugh. If I could King defeat you Yi, Ms. Yi, I wouldn't be here being roasted by you. I'm actually a little tempted." End of this chapter. Chapter 2266. What is this? What is this, Wah? Strange noises came from the black and white bear in the backpack. It seemed to be curious about everything here, as if it was a child who had just left home and opened the door to a new world. Yulia resisted the urge to stuff Famine into her backpack. She rolled her eyes, got on her bicycle, and walked slowly on the road. The plushie, the waist, said that it wanted to take a good look at the city, so early in the morning, under Metatro's strange gaze, senior sister, Yulia, carried the black and white plushie out of the house. Emissary? Isn't that one of those abominations in the Nirvana ocean? I have a lot of them in my lab. Do you want them? Why didn't you tell me? If you had told me earlier, I would have given them to you. Rolled eyes. Jamia? I think there was a guy like that, but he died prematurely. I heard that he was bitten to death while playing with a cat-eared girl. I heard that he was still thinking about her before he died and didn't have time to take a picture. Rolled eyes. Miley? I don't remember her. Maybe she's a noble lady? These days, there are at least 800 people who want to be the crown princess candidate, even my fiancé candidate number in the hundreds. Who can remember all of them? Dead fish eyes. Meshi? That's amazing. She was known as a commoner's genius, and was one of the first candidates to be the crown princess candidate. After that, there was no after. How can girls be as fun as research? I don't even remember what my maid looks like, okay? Rolled eyes again. Senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but sigh. Then, she fell silent. Although a lot of what Famine said was irrelevant, it still gave her a lot of inspiration. However, as expected, there were traces of the original Void Devil in the page world of the Holy Land. The concept of the Nirvana ocean had always existed in the memories of the big shots in the Holy Land. However, the stage of the page world of the Holy Land was in the Holy Land, and there was no plot related to the Nirvana ocean. Famine's story seemed to confirm Madanzo's guess that the original world might have been destroyed by the original Void Devil. You said that Princess Gaia is in charge of the world after death. What does that mean? It's a world that can only be visited after death. Famine said casually, real souls are very precious. Isn't it a waste to let them die? The world after death is in charge of the reincarnation of real souls. Only by maintaining the balance of the world after death can the balance of the Holy Land be maintained. It is impossible for either side to overflow. Senior sister, Yulia, said in astonishment, there are always times when the birth rate is higher than the death rate, right? Moreover, they should be in the majority? How would I know? If I knew, I would be the master of the world after death, okay? So reasonable? Why did Queen Gaia become the ruler of the world after death? Lin Sanjia hoped to get an answer, but Famine, the doll in her backpack, had already fallen asleep. It was ridiculous that it could even blow bubbles out of its nostrils. Yulia rolled her eyes again and pedaled hard. Soon, they arrived at the driver's school and continued today's driver training. The rescue work in Second Upper Capital was still in full swing. Everything seemed to be coming back from the dead. This was not the first time that Ludic met the president of the student council. In fact, compared to her cold appearance, Ludic felt that the president's state was listless. "You like spicy food?" He looked at the super spicy dipping sauce on the girl's table and felt that his throat was dry. Spicy fried pork chops, so delicious. Ludic. Principal Ludic was now acting as the president. He slowly sighed and picked up a document. The students in this document are missing. The strange thing is that the rescue team did not find them. Even if they died in the disaster, they should be able to find their bodies. However, the result of the search was nothing. The silver-haired president, whose skin was almost pale, was still expressionlessly eating the pork chops that she had been longing for. "Is there anything else?" the girl suddenly asked. "No." Ludic shook his head. Ludic didn't come clean about the fact that the missing students were the ones who had bitten him to recover under Calvin's arrangement. This wasn't the Holy Light Kingdom, and it wasn't the Free City. He would subconsciously magnify the evil thoughts in the hearts of the people here. He didn't want to experience the experience of being locked in the basement like a human medicine bag again. Summer Festival. The beautiful president slowly raised her head. "What?" Ludic opened his mouth in shock. "Continue." Ludic looked at the girl in disbelief and said, "With the current situation of the Second Upper Capital, this isn't appropriate, right? Not to mention that many students died in the disaster this time, there isn't enough manpower to prepare for this celebration. Let's talk about the mood. Do you think the students are still in the mood to hold a celebration?" "Command." The silver-haired president said softly again. Ludic shook his head. He had seen the conversation between Calvin and Ludic, and it was also a one-sided method. However, Ludic didn't care about the authority of the student council. Calvin cared about the position of the principal of the pilot school for his own purposes, but he didn't care about it. But what the hell was organize an outstanding summer festival. People in suffering need a little joy. Even a little joy can dilute the sadness brought by death. You who live, carry with you the hope of those who have left and step forward. Unlocked achievement. This principle is not bad. Refuse to organize the summer festival. If you can't do it, then don't go. Dirty master, please get out of the school. Lose the right to act as principal, lose the right to teach. Unlocked side quest. The Fallen Ludic, the most beautiful boy quest in Bar Street. Gifting a female secretary, a friend of fire, a sports car, a box of Bylon's chicken essence, a two-headed dragon. What the hell is a two-headed dragon? I almost couldn't help but choose B, okay? I'll do my best. In the end, Principal Ludic sighed and nodded. But please don't have too much hope. The gate of the second Shangjing military base was opened again. The tragic situation in the base shocked the rescue team. With heavy hearts, they began to clean up the corpses and blood stains in the base. Shinji? Meshi walked out of the training mech's cockpit and jumped onto the mech's palm. Then, the palm landed on the mech's palm. The rescue work was almost finished, so she volunteered to help clean up the base. This Kale Lot pilot had always worked hard and was willing to stay on the front lines. She was even close to the people and did everything by herself. She was always able to bring hope to people. She was almost a perfect character. How did you get here? Meshi looked at her roommate in confusion. I joined the corpse removal team. Madanzo said casually. I heard that the work here is quite heavy, so I was sent here. I see. Meshi nodded. Then please work hard, Shinji. I will also help you clean up the passageway as soon as possible. Madanzo said, I heard that Kurlet is being repaired, right? Meshi said, the engineers from other bases have already been sent here. However, some of the necessary parts haven't arrived yet, so the repair work hasn't officially started yet. Madanzo looked at the training mech behind Meshi and asked curiously, "You've always been piloting, Kurlet. Are you not used to this type of training mech?" "There will always be some." Meshi smiled with a complicated expression. "It's just that before I became the pilot of Kurlet, the training mech was always with me. In fact, it made me feel relaxed. It's because the training mech is simpler." Madanzo smiled. "It's because you don't have to face the emissary," Meshi said softly. "This is for you." Madanzo took out a white feather from her backpack. "Perhaps it will be of some help to you." "A feather?" Meshi was stunned. "It's a lucky item." Madanzo smiled. "Actually, Yulia asked me to give it to you. She hasn't been able to talk to you for the past few days." "Thank you." Meshi nodded. At this moment, the communicator rang. "Miss Messi, please come to the passageway in Area D. There's a place that needs to be cleared. Please." "Okay, I'll be right there," Meshi responded, then looked at Madanzo apologetically and quickly boarded the training mech's cockpit again. Madanzo chuckled as she watched her leave in a hurry. "That's all I can do for you. Thank me for being your teammate, newbie." "Yep. As expected, I'm a reliable senpai." Seiji suddenly felt a soft touch on his back, accompanied by a girl's unique fragrance and a sweet voice. "Shinji-san." "Marie?" Brown ponytails, red-rimmed glasses, and a proud something. Yep, it was the girl who boldly confessed to him that day in the piano room. "I'm gay, Marie-san. The only person I love is Zhu-kun." Seiji directly rejected her that day as well. "I know how to help young boys reconstruct their worldview." The passionate girl with a proud something smiled. "I love using my hands to reconstruct the worldview of adolescent boys. It's very comfortable." Madanzo couldn't help but sigh. "I'm just afraid that you won't have room to use your hands." The passionate girl blinked her eyes as if she didn't understand. Madanzo sighed again. "So, why me? Is it because I'm the youngest in the entire school and can satisfy your special hobby?" "No, it's because of some special reasons." The passionate girl shook her head and gently stroked Madanzo's face. "If I told you that you're very similar to a senpai that I've always admired, would you believe me? I even thought that you were her child." Madanzo blinked and reflexively asked, "Your senpai? How old is she this year?" "About 2 or 3 years older than me," Marie said softly. "So?" Madanzo was rather curious. "What kind of illusion is it that makes you think that I'm your senpai's child?" The girl said, "Don't you know? I'm one of the survivors of the 38th impact. My time stopped at 15 years ago. So, time is indeed a bit unreal for me." Madanzo directly used the computer to search for information about the 38th impact. After the 38th impact, a special space was created. It covered an area of more than 30 kilometers. The people in this special space had always been living, but they lived in an area where time was very slow. They lived in this special space for less than a year, but 15 years had passed in the outside world. A way to break this special space was found not long ago, and this special group of people was reintegrated into today's society. "So, you're really an auntie?" Madanzo looked at the girl named Marie strangely. "You're so annoying. My physical and mental age is also 16 years old, okay? It's just that our time is different. But I'm really gay." Madanzo looked at the sky and said. She was so straightforward with her words. The passionate Marie didn't seem to be discouraged at all. Instead, she lifted Madanzo up high and put her on her lap. "Jinsei-kun, although Jinsei-kun is also very nice, a beautiful girl has her own benefits too. For example, isn't this very comfortable? It smells so good. But I'm still gay." The girl Marie said pitifully, "Jinsei-kun, don't you have any longing for women? For example, those older, drunken big sisters who only wear shorts?" "Humph," Madanzo said disdainfully, "how can a gay succumb to such low-level biological desires? What about those beautiful girls who have no relations?" Marie continued to whisper in Madanzo's ear, Beautiful girls with white skin like dolls, who are at your mercy? Can you be more specific? Madanza looked at the sky. For example, long silver hair, and a small body that hasn't developed yet. Can you be more specific? Do you like the president of the student council? Marie narrowed her eyes. In my era, the president was the most popular girl on campus. After so many years, she's still the number one. What did you just say? Madanzo suddenly turned around. In your era? You're really attracted. Marie sighed. Sure enough, the lowly type is more popular. Is there no market for me anymore? I'm so sad. You said that the president of the student council is from the same era as you? How is that possible? Madanzo was stunned. Why is she still in the school? Marie was also stunned. The president is the president. She's always been the president. What's so strange about that? Strange? It didn't make any sense. However, the whole driving school thought it was reasonable. Madanzo couldn't help but tremble slightly. Marie's incredulous voice suddenly sounded, Shinsi-kun, why are you, although I'm very happy with your enthusiasm, I've already said that you won't have room to use your hands. Madanzo shrugged and lightly flicked the girl's forehead. So, sleep. Chapter 2267. Everything was recovering in an orderly manner, and it was recovering very quickly. The driver's school had also regained its liveliness in the past few days. The students were working hard to prepare for the summer celebration. Ludic originally thought that the students would be somewhat resistant to the restart celebration, but he didn't expect the students to be unexpectedly enthusiastic. Because it was the celebration that everyone had been looking forward to. If it weren't for this incident, she would have gone on stage with me. If it weren't for this incident, she would have gone on stage with me. There were many stories about him and her. Suddenly, Ludic had a change of mind. If he didn't consider the incident, the threat of the messenger, the continuous pain, and the identity of the driver's backup, they were really a group of young boys and girls in their prime. He also put aside his identity as a descendant of the Sage family, didn't think about his special constitution, and didn't care about the angry thoughts in the depths of his heart. He used to be the headmaster of the capital of Freedom Academy, a serious educator. The principal's representative began to appear in the classrooms used for rehearsal and seriously guided the students' rehearsals. On one hand, it was to complete the A option. Since he chose A, he had to complete it even if he had to kneel down, right? On the other hand, perhaps he was really moved by the students' enthusiasm. Adults often collapsed in an instant. Adults were often moved in an instant as well. Oh, this principal's representative is not bad. Mary still persistently pestered her Mr. Shensi every day. Perhaps it was because Mr. Shensi really poked her XP. Madanzo was already used to this glasses lady's pendant. It seemed that no matter where it went, Mary could always accurately locate it. Therefore, it gave up resisting. Anyway, it was fine as long as this glasses lady didn't touch it. Recently, Madanzo also lacked communication with Yulia. She was very busy recently. She left early and returned late, but basically, she was only in the dormitory and school. Meshi. The rescue team doesn't need me anymore, so I can come back to class. Can I participate in the choir rehearsal? I can't resist the welcome from your classmates. Welcome back, Meshi. I heard that Yulia has been working hard for the driver's training. Is that true? You can ask her. Meshi didn't say anything. She stood in the middle of the students and earnestly rehearsed the song. Summer Fire. The pilot school had already started the preparations for the celebration. There were always figures of students who were busy until late at night shuttling back and forth in the school grounds. On the 8th day after the disaster in the second upper capital. It was the 8th day since Zhu Chu disappeared. Perhaps he had already died in the disaster, but his body had yet to be found. Every day, apart from running into the cockpit of Vitsong Lei to slack off, the thing that senior sister, Yulia thought about the most was how to steal Messenger 1 from the depths of the school. She still wanted to dig out the upgrade materials in 1's body, but she didn't find a good way. Ragdoll Desolation told her that Envoy 1 was alive. Furthermore, this level of abomination was rare even in the Nirvana Ocean. Of course, she knew that it was rare. Even in the Void Dimension, how many people could encounter an active Void Azura? But there was nothing he could do about it. His body felt really good when it leveled up. Who didn't like leveling up? Even the undying life forms of the dimensional Void Dimension were very superficial, alright? Oh yeah, aren't you very powerful? Why haven't you found Zhu yet? That means he's more powerful than me. That seems to make sense. She actually didn't believe it. If she could defeat him, she wouldn't have to parade him around the streets every day, right? Then when are you going to meet your sister? Yulia couldn't help but ask. Actually, it wasn't hard to meet her because the student council president would be in the dorm every night. Recently, he was only 2 floors away. But every time she asked this question, Ragdoll Desolation would shyly say that he wasn't ready yet. Yulia rolled her eyes. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. This time, she unexpectedly received an accurate answer. Yulia couldn't help but feel surprised. Tomorrow is the summer festival. We'll see her no matter what. So, unknowingly, Yulia couldn't help but think. She suddenly realized that, unknowingly, she had already adapted to life in the pilot school. In fact, if it weren't for Ragdoll Desolation's appearance and Senior 11's presence, she might have already forgotten where she came from. Whether it was her or Senior 11, the number of times they met could be counted on one hand. Moreover, they didn't talk about the pages. It was as if they originally belonged here. It was as if they had gradually assimilated into this place. Yulia suddenly shook her head vigorously, but her eyes gradually became confused. I've been corroded to this extent. Ragdoll Desolation looked at her appearance and couldn't help but shake his head, muttering, I'm also sleepy. Yulia, wake up, wake up. It's Ludic, teacher? She slowly opened her eyes and rubbed her head tiredly. How did I fall asleep here? Probably because you're too tired from training. Mr. Ludic smiled and said, After all, the most important thing is to familiarize yourself with Song Lei. You work too hard. Yulia said, I need to familiarize myself with Song Lei as soon as possible. Otherwise, a second Shangjing won't be able to protect itself when the next impact occurs. Thank you for your hard work. Mr. Ludic patted her shoulder lightly. But you still have to balance work and rest. Today's training will end here. Tomorrow is the summer festival. You should have a good rest. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. I'll ask the driver to send you back. No need. I'll ride the bicycle myself. Yulia shook her head, yawned, and stretched. But I feel much better after sleeping for a while. Then, teacher, I'll go back first. Wait. Ludic-sensei suddenly stopped her. You're dull. Ludic-sensei picked up a black and white doll from the ground. You're dull. Yulia blinked and said subconsciously, I feel like I won't feel bad even if I throw this doll away. Is that so? Ludic-sensei was surprised. But I see you carry it with you every day, even when you enter the cockpit. I feel like it's very important to you. Probably. Yulia took it and stuffed it into her backpack. Why did you stop? After school, Meishi and Shinji walked together. Shinji was staring blankly at the figure of a young girl pushing a bicycle under the setting sun. It's Yulia-san. Shinji said slowly. Is she done with her training? I rarely see her leave so early. Suddenly, Shinji felt a soft touch, and before he could react, his arm was already in Mary's embrace. The little boy's ears instantly turned red. Ma, Mary, why did you suddenly appear again? So Jinni-kun likes this kind of blonde girl. Looks like I'll have to dye my hair, Mary said with a sigh. Shinji said, What are you talking about? Mary said faintly, It's no wonder. A blonde girl, a genius pilot, an all-rounder in sports, has a fiery temper, and is sometimes unruly. She's indeed a little boy of your age. Is Yulia that kind of person? Shinji opened his mouth in shock. Seems like it? Mary smiled and said, Jinni-kun, don't tell me you've already forgotten how Yulia-san bullied you? Shinji shook his head. The bespectacled girl suddenly leaned in front of Shinji, almost touching him. But I won't lose to her. Even if she's a princess, I won't lose because I'm your knight. He subconsciously stepped back, but his footsteps were unstable, and he fell to the ground. The bespectacled girl suddenly burst into laughter. She was always so cheerful. Then, see you tomorrow. Jinni-kun, you have to miss me tonight. This is a picture I took after I took a shower last night. I'll send it to you. The little boy seemed to have suffered a violent blow, and his face instantly turned red. At this time, a chuckle came from behind him. Shinji helplessly looked up and saw Meshi covering her mouth and laughing. Mary, you're very proactive. Shinji was suddenly embarrassed. Please don't laugh at me. The sound of a motorcycle was heard, and then it rushed out of the school gate. It was Mary riding a motorcycle. Meshi looked at her running under the sunset and suddenly whispered, Mary must be enjoying the time she has now. After all, her time has stopped for so long. Shinji thoughtfully looked at his communicator. On the interface, there was a message from the bespectacled girl, and his eyes flickered. Jinni-kun, you can't waver. Meshi patted his head and said in a big sister tone, you have to be clear about who you like. That's what a real man is. You don't have the privilege to have both of them. You're right, I choose to be gay. Shinji subconsciously sighed. Meshi's hand turned into a knife and chopped Shinji's head. She said in a bad mood, don't be naughty, let's go. We still have to cook when we get back. Okay, the boy and the girl. The figures of the students gradually moved away from the school gate. In an office on a certain floor of the teaching building, the afterglow of the setting sun was reflected on a pair of binoculars. A young girl with long silver hair was currently opening her mouth and biting into a freshly fried spicy steak. She ate and looked through the binoculars from time to time without any expression. Suddenly, the girl walked to the table. The table split open, and then a screen slowly floated up. The girl's finger lightly swiped on the screen. She was thinking about something. She seemed to be satisfied or dissatisfied. We're back. When they walked into the dorm's common room with the food they bought on the way, they saw a Yulia lying on the sofa in a casual shirt and shorts. She was lifting a black and white teddy bear and swinging it a few times from time to time. Yulia, what are you doing? Meshi couldn't help but ask curiously. I'm looking for something special. Nothing special. Yulia shrugged, casually tossed the teddy bear to the side, and then rushed towards Meshi. I'm so tired today, I need to replenish Meshi's energy. I still have to cook, stop messing around. Stingy. Meshi patted her head. Before I cook, I'll go upstairs and pack my clothes. Help me wash the ingredients, Yulia. Okay. Yulia replied weakly as she watched Meshi walk upstairs in disappointment. A figure walked past her, tiptoeing along the ground. Stop. Shinji's body froze. A long leg stepped on the wall, and the beautiful blonde girl instantly forced the boy against the wall. Trash, disgusting guy, you're pestering Meshi again today. Who do you think you are? He hugged his backpack and curled up in fear. Yulia pressed her finger against the boy's forehead and glared at him fiercely. I'll go back to my room first. The boy lowered his head and ran away. Yulia blinked in surprise, then rubbed her chin and muttered, Why does it feel so good? Is it so good to bully this guy? She immediately shook her head. Why wash the ingredients? Of course I'm going to ambush Meshi. The rooftop, the place to fight. She carried the laundry basket and pushed open the rusty door on the rooftop. The moonlight had just risen, and behind the fluttering clothes, there was the sound of a piano. Meshi passed through the laundry area and saw a black-haired young man sitting next to an old white piano on the rooftop. Zhu, classmate. The piano keys suddenly stopped, and the black-haired young man in front of the piano slowly turned his head and met her eyes. Meshi opened her mouth and subconsciously walked closer. It's really you. Zhu, classmate, it's great that you're fine. You've been missing for so many days. His fingers suddenly pressed against the girl's lips, and her voice abruptly stopped. Close your eyes. Then he stood up and gently lifted the girl's chin. The girl's eyes flickered slightly, and her breathing became slightly faster. She closed her eyes subconsciously. She only felt that the touch of his finger gradually moved to her neck collarbone. The skin that his slender fingers touched felt like a numbing electric current. Suddenly there was a sharp pain. Meshi suddenly opened her eyes, which were hazy and chaotic. The slender fingers had already pierced her chest, and the palms seemed to want to take something out of her body. Meshi, I'm coming. Yulia's voice suddenly sounded. Meshi's breathing stopped and she instantly fell to the ground. She clutched her collar tightly and gasped for breath. She was still so shocked that she broke out in a cold sweat. Meshi? Meshi? What's wrong with you? At this moment, Yulia quickly lifted the clothes that were hung up to dry. When she saw Meshi sitting on the ground, she hurriedly walked over. I seemed to. Meshi murmured, I saw a Zhu classmate. Yulia looked around in confusion. There was no one. Chapter 2268. I didn't find him. Yulia returned to her dorm room with a frustrated expression. She had been riding her bicycle for more than half an hour already, but she still hadn't found any trace of Zhu. If it wasn't for Meshi insisting that she really saw a Zhu, she wouldn't have even left her dorm room, let alone look for Zhu. You didn't find him. Meshi lowered her head thoughtfully. Could it be that Meshi misses Zhu-kun too much? Shinji suddenly said. But under the table, Yulia stepped on his foot right after he finished speaking. Shinji was in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. He was so scared that he didn't dare to say anything and continued eating. I'm a bit tired, so I'm going back to my room to rest. Just leave the food here. I'll clean it up later. After saying that, Meshi left the dining hall. Seiji and Seiji exchanged glances. Shinji hesitated for a moment before saying, Yulia-san, how about I clean it up for you? You should go rest as well. You've been training for an entire day, so you must be tired. There's no need for you to be so kind. Yulia sneered. What? Do you really think that you're the male lead just because you have two beautiful girls living with you? Put away your cowardly gentleness, it's worthless. Even if I want to find a man, I want a strong man. I didn't mean that. Tisk. Even the one with glasses in class is better than you. That's too much. F***ck off. Yulia threw away her bowl and chopsticks and ran up the stairs. Shinji heaved a sigh of relief and soon curled up on the sofa. He was doubting himself. Was he really a cowardly and incompetent person? That didn't seem right. He casually grabbed the black and white plushie next to him. He remembered that this was the plushie that Yulia had been carrying around with her. Shinji reflexively gulped as he sniffed the plushie. Yep, it was Yulia's scent. He felt refreshed, and his gloomy mood was instantly lifted. What the hell? Shinji was startled, as if he had encountered a terrifying tiger or wolf. He immediately threw away the teddy bear and rubbed his forehead with a distressed expression. I'm not such a perverted and filthy person. I haven't opened the email from Mary. Should I read it? There was only one corridor light on in the room. Under the dim light, Meshi stood in front of the mirror. She took off her clothes and looked at herself in the mirror in a daze. The place where his hand touched was touched by Zhu's finger in that dreamlike illusion. That feeling as if it had pierced through his body, was it just his imagination? Was it really like what Lord Jinsey had said? Was it just that he was too concerned about her? I don't know. Subconsciously, she continued to touch it. Using that remaining touch, she imagined that what was in the mirror would be what would happen in that dream. She panted, and her eyes became hazy. It was a strange state. She was completely immersed in a rebellious feeling. Genius pilot, outstanding military achievements, approachable, beautiful, and strict, all these seemed to be far away from her. Under the perfect persona, a small desire was sprouting. Juju. Tense. After a long time, Meshi leaned against the corner of the wall in a daze and panted. She looked at her wet fingers, and her expression turned ugly. She tried her best to get this unsightly thing out of her mind. However, the room was dimly lit, and the quiet environment was like a hotbed, constantly nourishing the unknown desire in her heart. In the middle of the night there were still excavators working. Actually, after so many days, even if there were people trapped, there was probably not much chance of survival. However, people were used to not giving up so easily. Let's take a break, I bought some food. A few experienced excavators came over. They hadn't rested since dinner, so they were really tired. There seems to be a person over there? They looked over. Under the flickering street lights due to the unstable voltage, there seemed to be someone walking slowly. It was a black-haired young man, but his appearance looked a bit strange. He walked with his hands on the wall, and his eyes were lowered. Are you okay? An excavator driver hurried over. This uniform. Are you a student of the driving school? Are you okay? Hello, classmate. The driver patted the young man's shoulder and asked with concern. I seem to be hungry. Hungry? The excavator driver was startled, and then quickly said, Come here, we have food over there. The young man raised his pale face and shook his head. That's not good. It's good that you can eat again. Young people shouldn't be too picky when they are still growing. The driver frowned. If you're hungry, you'll suffer. You're right. The young man was silent for a moment, and then slowly unbuttoned his clothes. Indeed, I shouldn't be picky. What are you doing? The excavator driver was stunned. When he was about to say something, his face suddenly changed. He saw a hole in the heart. This student, he had no heart. Sorry, I'm about to remember. The street lights completely dimmed. After a long time, the street lights returned to their original flickering state. Not far away, a tricycle slowly drove over. They were here to take over. Where's the person? Next to the excavator, there was a temporary table made out of wooden planks and chairs. There was still some heat from the food, but there was no one there. Maybe he went back first? How irresponsible. Morning, they met in the hallway. Meshi seemed listless, as if she didn't get enough sleep. Yulia wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. And so, they silently walked down the stairs one after the other. Yulia, are you still going to train today? Meshi was the first to ask, as if she had suddenly returned to her normal self. Yeah, I still have to train today. Yulia subconsciously nodded. Actually, Ludik-sensei said that she could rest today so that she could properly participate in the summer festival. That's such a pity. Meshi sighed. Yeah. I don't want to talk about it. Sensei made an appointment with me at 7:30, and I'm going to be late. I'm leaving first. Yulia hurriedly rushed out the door. Yulia, did you leave already? Next was Shinji. He was also listless, and his eyes were sunken. It seemed that he also didn't sleep for the entire night. Are you okay? Meshi asked him concernedly. She would always care about everyone, even if she seemed like the cold and aloof type, but that was only limited to her appearance. I'm fine. Shinji rubbed his nose and said, Today is the celebration. Let's work hard together, let's go together? Wait a moment, I'll go get my backpack. Sorry for making you wait. The girl hurriedly walked down the stairs with her backpack. What's this? Shinji curiously looked at the pendant on her backpack. He knew that it was a pendant, but it was rare to see a feather used as a pendant. This. Meshi subconsciously raised her backpack, and the feather pendant swayed a few times in the wind. It seems to be some kind of mascot. When did you put this on? She shook her head and didn't think too much about it. She heard that the bus was reinstated today, and if they missed it, they would have to walk to school, so she hurriedly pulled Shinji out of the dormitory. Meshi-san, good morning. Meshi-san. After successfully catching the bus, the girl received a lot of favorability. Shinji was squeezed into the back of the bus like air, hugging his backpack and sitting obediently. You're really popular. There was a knock on the window. Shinji was stunned and subconsciously looked over. Outside the bus, a brown-haired girl with an impressive figure was approaching on a motorcycle. Emery-san? Shinji was shocked and hurriedly rolled down the window. The young girl greeted him energetically. Did you take my photo and rush to the bar last night? Put on the helmet for me, Shinji said in a bad mood. At this time, the girl steered the car with one hand, reached out her other hand, grabbed Shinji's collar, pulled him closer, and kissed him on the forehead, then said with a smile, "Good morning." Shinji was stunned. The girl with the impressive figure clenched her legs and raised her butt. Then she sped up. See you later. Shinji subconsciously touched his forehead and looked at the valiant figure that was gradually disappearing. It was a tight leather shirt. Nice, but who the F***ck could resist this? It seems like I was flirted with? The little boy suddenly took a deep breath and told himself to calm down. He absolutely couldn't succumb to this kind of low-level physiological desire. The bus was moving at a moderate speed. Pilot school. Oh no. Today, all the pickets are on duty. Hurry. In front of the school gate, a group of little princes and princesses were crazily sprinting, quickly passing by the pickets in black. All of them? Shinji subconsciously stopped, looked at the students in black, and seriously counted. Until now, he still didn't know how many people there were in the picket. It was quite a lot. Keep counting, we won't be able to catch up. Meshi couldn't help but urge. Meshi, is that Mairi-senpai? Shinji suddenly asked. Didn't she go missing during the disaster? When did she come back? Went missing? Meshi looked over in confusion. How come I don't remember? Did you remember wrongly? Shinji blinked. Remembered wrongly. Did I remember wrongly? He shook his head and pointed at another boy in the picket. Who is this? Jemiya-senpai, a member of the pickets. Did you forget? Meshi subconsciously asked. Zinji-koen, what's wrong with you? You're weird today. Nothing. He shook his head, only feeling that his head was a little swollen. Let's go, we're really going to be late. There are only 3 minutes left before the school closes. In front of the school gate, Jemiya-senpai, who was wearing a black uniform, expressionlessly used a loudspeaker to remind the little princes and princesses who were still hesitating outside the school gate. Shinji walked past with his head lowered. Jemiya? It felt a strange sense of dissonance. Didn't you say that we don't need to train today? In the lounge of the underground training ground, Ludic-senpai looked at Yulia, who had arrived early, in surprise. She had even changed into her combat uniform. I'm not interested in participating in such children's activities. Yulia shook her head. In my eyes, you're not much older than them. Ludic-senpai smiled bitterly and said, You're also a child. I can do it, senpai. Yulia's expression was resolute. However, the student in charge of the control room is also allowed to rest today, Ludic-senpai said helplessly. Even if you want to train, no one will help you. Change your clothes. Don't come down to the training ground today. Ludic-senpai shook his head. Perhaps I'll stand here and watch you change your clothes. Old man, scram. Ludic-senpai instantly smiled. Scram. I won't scram. I'll just close the door and leave directly. It seems that I really have to change my clothes and return to the surface. Yulia sighed helplessly. When she was packing her things, she couldn't help but frown. The moment the storage cabinet was opened, a black and white ragdoll bear was inside. When did I go out with it? Maybe, maybe not, I did go out in a hurry this morning. Yulia frowned, took out a towel from the locker and closed the locker door. Nan Xiaonan. She suddenly turned around. The distance between her and the locker seemed to be shortened instantly. In her senses, she felt that the surroundings were spiraling and the calling sound came from the locker. Nan Xiaonan, who is it? Yulia frowned subconsciously. Nan Xiaonan. The sound continued through the air hole of the locker, like the calling of the devil. Her body trembled a few times. She approached the locker again and stretched out her hand. Nan Xiaonan. In the end, she didn't open the locker again. Instead, she retreated step by step as if she was afraid of something. She turned around and fled. Cold sweat instantly appeared. She ran in the outside passage with all her strength. However, behind her, there seemed to be a whirlpool crazily swallowing the path she had passed. At the end of the passage, there was a locker that constantly called out to her. Ah! She screamed and squatted on the ground in fear, covering her ears with both hands. Until everything seemed to be calm again. Well, let me briefly remind you of what you need to do today. The speaker was the main person in charge of this celebration in the class. The back door of the classroom suddenly opened. The new driver, Yulia, walked in slowly with a gloomy face. Everyone looked at her at once. Yulia? Don't you have training today? Meshi asked subconsciously. However, Yulia didn't seem to hear it. She went back to her seat silently. Just as she sat down, she suddenly stood up. Who put it here? She screamed in horror and knocked down the table and chair behind her. She pointed at her seat in fear. Yulia? Meshi approached and patted Yulia's shoulder. Take it away. Take it away. Yulia grabbed Meshi's arm in horror. Her face was pale. Quick, help me take it away. But Meshi hesitated. Yulia, there's nothing here. No, nothing? Yulia looked at her desk subconsciously. Impossible. There was clearly a black and white teddy bear sitting on the desk, smiling at him. It was smiling,